Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Ashley, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 8th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. We're going to call it to order, and we'd like to please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Marlowe?
Present.
Commissioner Connolly?
Here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Covarrubias? Commissioner Kogler?
Here.
Commissioner Neal?
Here.
Chairperson Christensen?
Here.
The record will reflect that Commissioner Covarrubias is absent. He did notify us he wasn't going to be able to make it tonight.
Great, thank you. How about staff introductions, please?
Marcy Reynoso and Ashley Peterson, Administrative Assistants.
Warren Frace, Community Development Director.
Katie Bannister, Associate Planner.
And this is Andrew Falso from the City Attorney's Office.
Darcy Delgado, Associate Planner.
Great, thank you so much. All right, moving on to general public comments regarding matters that are not on the agenda. Do we have anybody that would like to give us any comments or speak about anything that's not on the agenda tonight? Anybody on the line, Marcy?
No callers.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any agenda items proposed that need to be tabled or rescheduled?
There are none.
Thank you very much. All right, seeing none there, let's move on to the item 1 under public hearings for the variance for 25 Ridgeview Court. I'm looking forward to the staff presentation.
Thank you, Chairperson Christensen. As you, the first item on the agenda this evening is a front setback variance and a request to allow metal roofing on a single-family residence located at 25 Ridgeview Court. So here is a vicinity map. This is on the west side of town. As you travel up on 12th Street, as it starts to climb towards the west side of the city, there's a road that kind of veers off on the side called Fresno, and then it veers off onto Ridgeview. And so there's kind of two lobes of Ridgeview. You can see in red the site. It is on a cul-de-sac, just 3 houses on the cul-de-sac that we'll be talking about this evening. The site is just under a 1/4 acre in size, and it is in the R1 zoning district. So jumping into the site plan, so the existing structure is shown here, the existing residence is shown here in orange. There is an existing attached garage. It's attached by a breezeway between that orange shape and the purple shape. So those two structures are considered attached. The purple structure is proposed to be converted. It's a garage today. It's proposed to be converted into an accessory dwelling unit. And so the applicant will no longer have a garage. The city does not require replacement of those parking spaces. The applicant would like to have a covered parking area, a garage. And so they are proposing a garage to the west of the existing garage. There is an existing oak tree on the site. It's a 24-inch live oak tree. We'll see some images of it, but the green circle is indicative of the critical root zone of that oak tree. And there is today some existing asphalt under that oak tree and to the west of the existing garage. That's kind of outlined in blue, and it's that dark gray area now. So this is an oak tree that's already experiencing some impacts from the development of the site. And then the existing garage is served from the side of the garage, as you can see indicated by that purple arrow. The project would be a new garage, now shown in orange. It would impact the critical root zone of the tree, but would be about 12 feet away from the trunk of the tree. The new garage would have a garage door that faces Ridgeview Court, and that is the reason that the variance is needed this evening. So we'll jump into some of that as well. But staff is supporting the variance entirely because of the oak tree. We're looking to reduce impacts on the oak tree that's on the site. As I said, the oak tree is about 12 feet from the proposed garage. the garage would be about 5 feet from the front property line. It is on a cul-de-sac, and so it's a wider portion of asphalt, and that bulb on the cul-de-sac does have the appearance of being the applicant's driveway when we look at some of the street view images. And so even though the building will only be 5 feet from the front property line, it does appear to be a bit further back than that. Here is a look at the property. You can see the oak tree there in the rear of on the left side of the image, and then that existing garage is there in the foreground. That existing garage is less than 15 feet from the front property line, so you can already starting to see that the cul-de-sac pavement actually goes into what appears to be the applicant's driveway. Some looks at some additional looks at that oak tree. There it is on the left. You can see the existing garage there on the right of the image on the left, and then on the right side there is a slope down behind that oak tree. You can see the pavement, and there's kind of a retaining wall, and so the oak tree is just right there at the grade break on the adjacent to the paving. So the Paso Robles Municipal Code does have setbacks, of course, established for structures. In the R1 zoning district, the front setback for a garage door is typically 20 feet, 15 feet to the main building, but garage doors are meant to be 20 feet back, largely to provide enough space for cars to park in front of the garage that they wouldn't hang into the sidewalk or into the street. The code does have allowance for the Planning Commission to reduce the 15-foot front yard setback to as little as 5 feet, but in that case, the garage door is still meant to maintain a 20-foot front setback. The Planning Commission recently made a recommendation to the City Council, which ultimately the City Council did approve. This language in the code will, in the future, actually in 25 days or so, be changed so that a garage door, the Planning Commission could approve a garage door as close as 5 feet to the front property line, so either at 20 feet or at 5 feet. But that ordinance is not enacted yet. It will be in place on October 31st. And so this project on recommendation by the DRC is coming to you as a variance in order to allow that reduced front setback. In order to, and as I said before, this really is to protect that oak tree. So looking at the floor plan, so this is the existing floor plan. Nope, I misspoke. This is the proposed floor plan. You can see, going back, the existing house is there, and then towards the center of that is the existing garage that gets converted into an ADU, and then on the right is the garage, the new proposed garage. For the Planning Commission to approve a variance, this is some language about variances. Variances are an approval that allows minor adjustments to zoning standards when there are special or extraordinary circumstances which apply to a certain parcel that don't apply kind of generally within the district. In this case, it really is that oak tree that's pushing, that is special about this lot. There's an oak tree that would prevent the applicant from building the garage that their neighbors would otherwise be able to build. Variances cannot be used to grant special privileges that are inconsistent with the limitations of other properties. An attached garage attached to a single-family residence is typical for the R1 district, and so this property is not getting special privileges. Finally, the applicant does have to show that the granting of the application is necessary to preserve the enjoyment of their substantial property rights. Obviously, a two-car garage is pretty typical for a single-family residence. This is, in line with their substantial property rights. In addition to moving the building away from the oak tree, the applicant is proposing to use a mat slab foundation. This will means that the foundation will not have deep footings around the edge of the building. Those deep footings really do cut into the feeder roots for oak trees. And so as you can see in this image, the proposed foundation is only going to have 6 inches of embedment below the ground surface. So it's really going to reduce the impact on the roots of the oak tree. So between keeping the building away from and then having that shallower footing, staff and the applicant's arborists feel that the tree will be safe from too many impacts on it from construction. Here's a look at the elevations that kind of thinking of the kind of moving into the metal roof portion of this presentation. So the applicant is requesting to put a metal roof. This image is a little deceiving. The request from the applicant is just to put metal roofing over the garage. The elevation shows the metal roofing over the whole structure, but we do have a perspective showing more of what they're intending to do. Today, the house is the siding is a little bit worn, so they are looking to repaint and refresh the look of the house, and they are looking to put a new dark asphalt roof, shingle roof on most of the house, and then they're proposing metal roofing over just the garage portion of the building. I think, yeah, there's another image showing just that asphalt shingle on the kind of habitable portion of the building, and then metal roofing over the garage. The draft conditions would require that the applicant essentially choose one or the other. They could do the asphalt shingle, but it would go over the entire building. If they would like to use metal roofing, they can do so, but it would require them to do it over the whole building. When this went to DRC, the DRC members largely were comfortable with the metal roofing. There was a little bit of a split on that, but all members felt that the roofing should be consistent over the building. And so that is what's in the draft conditions this evening. If the Planning Commission would like to approve the roofing with two different styles, they could certainly amend that condition of approval. There is language in the municipal code about metal roofs. In general, single-family residences are supposed to have clay tiles or wood-shaked shingles, asphalt comp shingles, crushed roofs, crushed rock, or other similar roofing. Metal roof materials can be approved for single-family homes when they meet the findings that are listed here. So the material needs to be applied to the structure that is compatible with the architectural theme of the home. The material can't conflict with the residential character of the home and the surrounding neighborhood. And the proposed use and manner in which it would be applied demonstrates a high quality of craftsmanship. And finally, the roof design and materials used for the main building and the detached accessory buildings are compatible. And these findings are also why the DRC felt that the roofing needed to be consistent throughout the building. So jumping into essentially what's in the resolution in front of you this evening, there are some findings related to variances. We've talked about some of these already. Essentially, the variance can't be the variance is allowed when there are special circumstances. So in this case, the special circumstances are the oak trees, and then the fact that the lot is on a curving cul-de-sac, and so it reduces the amount of front yard area they have just because of the shape of the road. The variance cannot constitute a grant of special privileges, and that's not the case. Neighbors are also allowed to have covered garages. The third is that the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights. The Planning Commission also needs to find that the project is not detrimental to the health and comfort and convenience of the neighborhood. Another finding that is in the draft resolution is that the reduced front setback will preserve the oak tree that's located on the property. And finally, the Planning Commission would need to find that the reduced setback is not inconsistent with the established neighborhood pattern. In order to approve the metal roof, we just went through these, essentially that the metal roof needs to be used in a high quality manner, and that it needs to be consistent both with the house and with the character of the neighborhood. This project is exempt from environmental review as both a Class 3 and a Class 5 categorical exemption. Class 3 exemptions are for the construction of small structures, and Class 5 exemptions are for minor alterations and land use limitations that includes variances and setback exceptions. There are some conditions of approval included in the resolution. The first is that any exterior lighting would be dark sky rated. As I said, the new zoning ordinance is not in place yet, and so this condition would cover the dark skies effort that the city is embarking on. The next would be that, and this is one we've discussed, to provide a consistent roofing material over the entire building, and the resolution would allow for either asphalt shingles or the metal roofing at the owner's choice. The DRC had requested a condition that the asphalt to the west of the new garage be removed. Once the garage is in place and the garage door faces the street, that asphalt really won't have a purpose, and And so that was DRC's recommendation. There is a condition of approval that the applicant provide a landscape plan. That would be typical with any building permit for in the R1 zone. And then there is some existing rooftop mechanical equipment that is not screened. Our municipal code does require the screening of mechanical equipment, and so there is a condition of approval requiring that the rooftop equipment be screened in the future. And as we've seen in the site plan, the building that we're looking at there is that's currently a garage is proposed for some alterations as it is. So as always, the Planning Commission does have options. The first would be to approve the project with the draft resolution as it is presented. If the Planning Commission feels that there's conditions that need to be modified, or there's small changes to the resolution, we can certainly make those modifications, and then the Planning Commission could adopt that amended resolution. The third option would be if the Planning Commission wants to see significant changes, they could refer the project back to the DRC or to staff for additional analysis. And finally, if the DRC finds they cannot make the findings, they can deny the project. Staff's recommendation this evening is to approve the front setback variance and the metal roof materials using the draft resolution that's provided for you in the staff report. That does conclude staff's report, and I welcome your questions.
Great, thank you so much. We'll bring it back to the commissioners for questions of staff. Any commissioners have questions for staff? Commissioner Marlowe?
Yeah, I guess my only question would be, looking at the size of the garage and the tree, would there be any trimming of the tree branches at all, the oak tree? I might have missed that. That just seems like, looking on Google Earth and the photos, that garage would encroach onto where those tree branches are. And I don't think that's a huge deal to do that. I'm just curious, is there any consideration for having to do any trimming? And I guess I don't strictly know the rules on trimming back oak trees. I know we can't take them out, but just something to think about.
Yeah, arborists frequently do recommend tree limbs get trimmed back so that construction, they don't get knocked off during construction. I didn't include it in the presentation, but the designer of the project did do an analysis of where the largest branch that kind of comes off at an angle. He did an analysis of where the proposed roof would hit, and there are a few inches separation. There's nothing that would preclude the applicant from removing that limb if they want to remove it, but they have done an analysis that shows that limb could remain if they'd like to keep it, and the roof would not impact that. It wouldn't directly conflict with that limb.
Sure. Perfect. That's my only question. Thanks.
Commissioner Conley.
Thank you, Chair. I was part of the DRC on this, and I guess with regard to the variance, the main thing we were looking at is the setback and the reasons. I mean, in the sense it was brought to us in anticipation of the zoning change, and when that didn't occur, we recommended a variance instead, and that's the way we're headed. And we talked about a lot of things, but we only touched on the difference between the roof material very slightly, and I don't know how that fits into this variance, but I would like to know from, I guess, when the applicant speaks, why the change in roofing material on this. And
so the applicant is still requesting the same roofing materials that were proposed at the DRC. Staff is recommending that one material be selected. I'm not sure that answers your question.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe when the applicant speaks, we can hear the reason for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners have questions?
Yeah, could you
Commissioner
explain underneath the new garage, the material again? Is there any concern about the new structure settling, and will that, I know we're trying to be sensitive to the trees, but could you talk to me a little bit about the material that's being used? I know my house has settled immensely since, I was just curious how that might work.
Yeah, so I don't believe the applicant is in the audience, but I'm guessing they're online, so we can ask them. The designer did speak to structural engineers, and a mat slab, it will be designed by a structural engineer, and so it will have structural integrity. It's just a different way of approaching a foundation. It's a way that has less impact on the oak tree, but you can see it's actually 12 inches consistent across. Typically, you'll get really deep footings that are 2 to 3 feet deep, and then you'll have 4 to 6 inches of concrete kind of everywhere else on the floor. In this case, they'll actually have 12 inches of concrete consistently under the entire building. So I think they actually end up with more concrete, just distributed in a different way.
fashion. Thanks for explaining that. I was asking more for the applicant, I guess. I know they're being responsible for the tree. I too would like to hear from the applicant why they don't want one consistent roof type. I'd like to hear their rationale.
Any other commissioners have questions for staff? Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Comment and question. First of all, I would concur with staff on the roofing material. But as to the setback, Katie, if we were here in November, we wouldn't even be talking about the setback. Is that correct?
The Planning Commission would still have to review it, but it wouldn't be a true variance. It would be just an allowance that the Planning Commission has. You wouldn't have to make the special findings that are associated with a variance. You would be allowed to approve it as it'll be I believe it'll be a modification. If you remember when we went through all the different zoning code, I can't remember if it's a site plan modification or I think it's a development plan modification to Planning
Great.
Commission.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Katie, I had one question from the I was on DRC, and I remember in regards to the roofing, I know I'm really thankful that they provided that rendering showing the two types. Were you saying that after the DRC meeting or from that meeting, you were still recommending, because the variance for the single material use on the roof?
So the recommendation isn't necessarily related to the variance. The variance really has to do with how close that garage door is to the front property line. In addition, the applicant is asking for this roofing material that has to be, typically the DRC could approve the metal roofing, but because we were bringing this variance, we like to bring projects in total to whatever final decision-making body makes the decision.
Yeah.
Staff's recommendation is that the roofing be consistent. The applicant, whether it's asphalt, the asphalt or metal, both seem reasonable for the architectural style of this house, but the recommendation is it just be all the same.
Okay, thank you. I just from that meeting, I couldn't remember how we ended it. I know we moved to the variance, which makes this much easier for us since the zoning code is not in place at this time. Okay, so do we have any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, would the applicant like to give a presentation or speak? Are they on the line? Maybe answer some questions?
They don't appear to be with us.
Okay, well, then we'll move on to public comment. And do we have anybody out there in the public that would like to comment on this particular agenda item tonight? Marcy, do we have anybody online?
No, there's no callers.
Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioners have any discussion items on this particular item that they would like to discuss? Commissioner Conley?
Chair, I think that because the staff, the applicant isn't in the audience to answer the question, we should probably kind of consider the roofing material, where we're at with that for the mixed use of the mixed composition of the roof. And I think I would be in favor of having one composition rather than two, but I think maybe that's a point of discussion for us to consider.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any discussion items? Commissioner Kogler?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious if those are DRC, was there much conversation about the setback? This is a really tight little knitted area of driveways and circulation, and it seems like the vehicles parked in front of the garage are going to stick substantially into the street. And I don't know how that's workable. So if anybody can help me with that, I'd appreciate it.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Davis?
With that, I have that same thought process as Commissioner Kogler. I also am curious how the adjoining neighbor right to the end of the cul-de-sac feels. I don't think have they had an opportunity to speak out on it. I mean, because that is another structure that is pretty close to their property. So I just wondered if the DRC had looked into that whatsoever.
Yeah,
Commissioner Marlowe?
with, thanks, Chairman. With the reduced setback, I'm assuming they wouldn't be allowed to park their vehicle in front of the garage. It would be in the garage only, because if they parked in front, they'd be in the street, which can't be in the right of way like that, I'm assuming. And then in addition to that, I think it's fine. I think they did a good job with, the double mat slab makes sense. And I think that following staff's recommendation of a single material, I'd be in favor of the project. And then just obviously with the information regarding the parking, I think that as long as we all agree, we understand that they're not going to be able to just park in front of their garage like that. They'll have to park in it or drop stuff off. Is that correct?
Certainly people can park, in a parallel manner, in the street. So it's possible the applicant might do that. If they were parking in a way that blocked other neighbors' access, they would be in violation, and a code enforcement could tow cars and so forth.
Which would be the same as anyone parking anywhere in a cul-de-sac. You'd just be able to park along the edge. So I think as long as they follow those rules, it's kind of a quiet spot. But I'm in favor of the project, and I'd be okay with staff's recommendation.
Any other commissioners' comments? Commissioner Neal?
I think thank you, Chair, sorry.
Okay.
I think there was a comment that the asphalt would be removed, that existing asphalt. I'm thinking if that asphalt is removed and potentially replaced with a different or asphalt or a permeable paver outside the drip line, we could get some off-street parking there, is a thought. But I too think the project is fine. I think Ridgeway Court is probably not a very busy road, and the folks that go up there are most likely headed home as a general rule. So I'm comfortable with the variance for the setback, and I too agree that we need to pick a singular roofing material. So that's it for me.
Commissioner Conley?
Thank you, Chair. I was under the impression when we were at the DRC that the 10-foot setback is to the property line and that the actual cul-de-sac was inside that property line, so that they actually had more than 10 feet available to them in the driveway. But that's the way I recall. I believe they technically have more than the 5-foot setback based on the that being the property line, but I might be wrong. In any event, I'm in favor of it too.
Any other follow-up? I'll save my comments. This is Chairperson Christensen. So I was on DRC, and I know that there is a variance for the setback. There's a 5, and then there's roughly, I think it's a 10-foot on that. What the applicant talked about in the meeting was there was a recommendation to remove the asphalt to create more permeable space and probably actually additional parking space because there's going to be enough room for that to the left of the garage. Now, that being said, even if that wasn't used for such, I've been up on that street a couple times even recently. There's a couple houses there where the houses, the garages aren't necessarily 5 foot off the street, but they're close to the street. It's a very hodgepodge neighborhood, and there's a couple spots up there where the garages are pretty close to the street. They're just not in a cul-de-sac, and the cul-de-sac does eat into that property a little bit, but it's such a quiet court. I honestly, even from DRC, I didn't have an issue. The thing I asked for, and I know that the slope drops off at the back, so that I think was one of the reasons we were hoping they would get rid of some of the asphalt, because it would allow for more area for water absorption for the trees since they're taking some of that away. The other thing was I asked, one thing that we have now that we didn't have at DRC was the rendering with the 2 roof materials. And so I'm glad they provided that, because I can see what they were trying to do now with the two different materials. So I can say that I appreciate that. And to be honest with you, I don't know that I particularly care one way or the other. I think it looks nice with the metal and the other because it's such a long house. But if my other commissioners are have a different mindset, I'm okay. I'm okay with everything else about the project. Commissioner Neal.
I do have a question. The on page 6, the site plan that's shown on page 6 has a different drip line than we're seeing on the screen. I'm just wondering which one is correct. And it looks like if we go to page 19, well, I mean, is that a portion of that? I'm not sure which one is correct, I guess is my. And if the site plan on the screen is correct, then I would not recommend that there be off-street parking in that location.
So the Paso Robles Municipal Code requires the critical root zone, which is a fixed distance. There are some municipalities that use the drip line to say where the protection zone is. Because limbs can be trimmed back, Paso Robles doesn't use that measurement. So the green line, I believe the kind of scalloped line around the tree is a true representation of where the drip line is, but the critical root zone is the green circle that you see here. I've scaled it off of the dimensions on that site plan. So it's a 24-foot radius critical root zone is what the green line is indicating.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Any more comments, or do we have a motion?
Well, I kind of agree with some of the fellow commissioners about the consistent roof type. I really wanted to hear from the property owner and why they wanted that metal roofing. I thought maybe it had to do with maybe the trees. You can hear the acorns falling. I don't know if that's good. I don't think it's close enough that was an issue. But since they're not here, I think I am inclined to agree with the commissioners. I'd like to see a consistent rooftop.
Okay. Do we have any other comments or motion?
Chairperson Christensen, I'd like to make a motion, please.
Commissioner Neal, make a motion. Anybody second?
Probably need to
I'm
make
sorry.
a motion.
Sorry, I'm jumping right ahead of you. So sorry. Go right ahead. I apologize.
I'd like to move the approval of the project by adopting draft resolution PC 24XXX based on the findings and subject to conditions of approval.
Now do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Marlowe with a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Neal?
Can we discuss it first?
Oh, sure.
I have a
I
question.
apologize.
Because attachment 3 has language about the metal roof. So should we modify the motion with regard to
I think
the resolution has the draft resolution has language about the metal roof.
it does. However,
Yes.
the conditions, site-specific conditions of approval, it's read it somewhere that states that the roofing material should be consistent.
That's staff's recommendation. Katie, can you confirm that that's the?
But that's not in the resolution.
Yes, page 27 of the agenda packet, the 7th site-specific condition of approval. Before building, yeah, it does require consistent roofing.
So the draft resolution allows metal roofing, but the site-specific conditions of approval require that it's either metal or asphalt.
Okay.
So they're going to do one or the other.
I thought we were approving the resolution as it was written.
And site-specific.
Yeah, okay.
Condition.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion items on that?
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
Thank
you're
you.
not interrupting. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so we have roll call, please.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Marlowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
No.
Chairperson Christensen?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-1.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to item number 2, the conditional use permit for cell tower. We have a staff presentation.
Katie and I are going to be playing musical chairs tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this is a conditional use permit for a wireless communication facility at 2101 Vanderlip Court. So here we have the location map. The location is, most near the larger intersection of Union Road and Golden Hill Road. And just kind of blowing up the site, you can see that the cell tower is proposed in where you see on the left, the blue area is the lease area on this parcel. So there are 3 other buildings, and then as you can see on that larger aerial kind of setback that it's quite a ways set back from Union Road and then also Golden Hill Road. All right, so here's an existing condition site plan. So as I mentioned, there are 3 buildings on the site, and then highlighted in red is the location of the lease area where Verizon Wireless would like to install a new wireless cellular facility. The proposed facility is going to be a eucalyptus tree. So originally when this project came in and it went before DRC, it was proposed as a monopine. And as this progressed, the DRC had made some comments and suggested that a eucalyptus tree might be more appropriate. So here we see on the proposed site plan, kind of zooming in on that lease equipment area. It's a 10 feet by 36 feet area, and it is going to take 1 parking stall and take it out of commission essentially. So as part of the application, the Verizon Wireless would relocate that parking stall adjacent to one of the building that is. I didn't outline it, but just to the right of that lease equipment area and parking stall. So let's see. This is here, I got to go to the next slide. Here we go. This is an overall 63-foot tall structure. And that is really to include additional branching. So with wireless communication facilities, there are some stealthing design requirements. And so based on what the applicant is requesting, they would like the top of the antennas to be at 58 feet, but then they're also providing 5 additional feet of branching to provide that stealth design. And so this is something that the stealth design is part of the development criteria that we have in our zoning code. But with that said, the zoning code also says that they have to adhere to the height limitations of the district, which is 50 feet, unless they can demonstrate that is not feasible. And so that is part of their request tonight. So on this screen, you can see with the elevation comparison with the building height of 18 feet, and you can see where the lower branches are at 23 feet, and then the overall height, which would be the top of the branches, not the top of the cellular equipment, but the top of the branches, that the overall structure would be 63 feet tall. Some other standards that they're adhering to is that the ground-mounted equipment be screened, which they do have a proposed fence to screen their cabinet and other ground equipment, and demonstrating that it cannot be the cellular antennas cannot be co-located. There aren't in this area any tall enough buildings for them to co-locate or other cellular towers for them to co-locate. So that is why they are proposing a brand new facility. And then just generally compatibility with the surrounding area, which kind of goes back to the type, the species that has been selected. So in this case, DRC feedback was, it seems like there are more eucalyptus trees in this area, which is why they changed from a monopine to the eucalyptus. So as I mentioned, they are requesting a height exception here because the zoning code, the height limit for the C3 zone is 50 feet. So as part of our code, really the applicant, the burden is on them to provide the evidence that as part of the application, they're showing how it complies with the standard and how it would be impractical or technologically infeasible to construct this at the, what the height limit is. And they have put together a couple of maps for you to see what the existing coverage looks like. And so the green color represents good, yellow, or let's see, I might be reading that wrong. Here we can see the green, so that green is good, right? So the new coverage would provide a wider area for coverage for Verizon users. And so they do have an explanation of the height exception request that they're making in the staff report, but visually this is just to show you what the changes would provide for coverage. So again, I'm going to go back. You can see it's a lot of red, a lot of yellow, and then moving forward with, if this project were approved with that height exception, they would have a lot more coverage. All right, so they've also put together a number of renderings to demonstrate what the mono eucalyptus would look like from a distance. And so this is looking northwest from Union Road, and you can see in this red oval the proposed eucalyptus tree. And this is proposed looking northeast from Prospect Avenue, and you can see it kind of behind those trees in the distance. And here it is proposed looking south from Mesa Road. And in the staff report, of course, there were also before, so you could see what the comparison looked like. One of the comments that came out of the Development Review Committee was, have we approved these wireless communication facilities over the height limit for a base zone? And the answer is yes. We have approved at 1750 Commerce Way a 65-foot tall eucalyptus, as well as at 2906 Spring Street a 57-foot tall eucalyptus. So again, the applicant is proposing 63 feet, so in the middle of those two. So in terms of CEQA, the project is exempt based on it being a Class 3 exemption, which is for small structures. All right, and as always, the Planning Commission has several options. So tonight, approving the project would be adopting draft resolution based on the required findings, which there are a number of findings for a conditional use permit as well as wireless communications facilities. My next slide kind of goes into one of the findings that I think you guys should would be part of your discussion, but otherwise the conditions of approval that are tied to this are things that we are doing standard for wireless communications facilities. There's nothing that stands out, but ongoing maintenance, if the branching does not stealth the equipment anymore, that they would have to maintain that and fix it, and for staff to be able to review the materials before it's installed, and to also verify once it's installed that it actually is to have it verified that it is no taller than the 63 feet. So those are some of the standard conditions that staff has been applying to these wireless communication facilities. The second option would be to approve it with some modifications, and that might be, making adjustments to what the Planning Commission feels is they're most comfortable with the height request. Option 3 would be referring this back to the DRC or staff for some additional analysis, or option 4, denying the project based on adopting findings of denial. So staff's recommendation really is to consider whether the project is impractical or technologically infeasible at a lower height. It seems that the height request is really the finding that the main finding that needs to be made in approving the draft resolution, if you're approving that height exception request, and then also, of course, finding the project exempt from CEQA based on those findings and subject to site-specific conditions of approval. I do believe we have the applicant present tonight, and yes, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Great, thank you for that. Bring it to commission for questions of staff or the applicant, or would you like to hear from the applicant first? Applicant first. Does the applicant like to give a presentation at this time? I think.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Pete Shubin with Sequoia Deployment Services, representing Verizon Wireless. I didn't prepare a presentation. Staff already discussed the design with you. I'm here for questions. There was one thing that staff finished with regard to the height of the facility of does it work properly at a lower height? The answer is no. If we could have gotten away from requesting the height exception, we would have. It does not function at a lower height due to the interference from the adjacent buildings if it was built at that lower height. And we submitted documentation to discuss that as part of the application materials. I could answer more questions for you if you like. I also have a RF consultant who's here to discuss any questions that pertain specifically to the emissions and the interference on those roofs.
Great, thank you. We'll bring it back to the commission for questions. Any commissioners have questions? Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kind of related, maybe there's some parts of this question. Help me understand federal law. I don't know who I'm addressing this to. Superseding city's regulations, obviously. And if I understand correctly, if somebody else wants to come in and co-locate, you can raise this tree, so to speak, 20 more feet into the air, if that's accurate. First question. And secondly, if AT&T comes to you and says, we want to co-locate on this tree, do you have an ability to say yes, no, or maybe?
So yes, regarding the first question about the additional 20 feet, that is correct. The CUP does require the stealthing component, so that's one of the findings. So in order to then do 20 additional feet, they couldn't just, it wouldn't be compatible with the CUP if it was just additional pole with more antennas. So in theory, they would, need to amend, and I believe it's actually conditioned if they're going to co-locate, it needs to amend the CUP to go 20 feet taller, because otherwise it defeats the stealthing component.
Under federal law, if AT&T was to come and request a co-location, Verizon would cooperate with AT&T or any other wireless carrier for that. That's common all over. It's been encouraged in law, required in law for since 1996. This facility in particular does not have enough ground space for AT&T equipment, so that creates a different issue. They would have to acquire ground space for equipment from the property owner. Verizon Wireless does not have the space to lease for additional ground equipment at this location. So it's a yes and no answer at the same time, because there's tower space, how that would work, and there's ground space, which doesn't exist for co-location.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
And just to add, so it's condition of approval number 17 that does read, any future modifications that adds height to the tower over 63 feet shall be considered to defeat the concealment elements of the tower and shall require an amendment of the use permit.
Okay, Commissioner Neal, do you have any questions?
I was on DRC, and I think we requested some evidence that it needed to be this 57, whatever and they provided a map, but they only provided a map at the full height. We didn't see a map at what would have been the allowed height. And that's kind of what I was hoping for in this meeting, and I don't see it. So I just need to now take it. I mean, you can do anything with the coverage map you wish, but I need to take it on faith that it doesn't work at all at the lower height, and that's my concern at the moment.
The response to that DRC comment was the Golden Hills height justification document that was submitted. Yes, it only shows maps. The tool is not refined enough to take into account those ground obstructions, meaning the buildings. So when we lower the map, it's not going to take into account those immediate obstructions next to the facility. And if you go back to the air photo of it, you can see that it's surrounded by industrial buildings on all sides. So in the mapping tool, you lower it, it considers the ground to be flat. It does not reflect the change in coverage. When we look at that, we have to look at the ground elevation as being higher because of those expansive roofs next to the site, causing interference with the signal coming from the facility. That's really the reasoning for the height. If we go back to, I believe it was slide 12 from staff, where it showed an existing facility that was just a few feet lower, that also required a height exception. You can see that that building adjacent to it is a single-story building. So the antennas relative to near solid obstructions buildings on that is actually a greater distance from the antenna to the roof. So that antenna is higher above the roof, as an example of a site where 7 feet of additional height was granted for that one, and the obstructions adjacent to it are lower. So it's a function of how the tools work and the detail that is not shown in the tools. They just don't get down that fine grain to individual buildings.
Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I just have a question. I don't understand your technology, but at your requested 63 feet, can you add on to that height and get more coverage? I mean, can you add extra technology at the 63 height, or would it require even more height to get more coverage?
This site is designed with all the radios and frequencies that Verizon Wireless has licensed in this region. So different bandwidths to provide the function. It functions at this height. To go taller could improve the coverage footprint. It's unnecessary because if we go back to the network map, you can see other sites providing service in the area. This is to provide service immediately around the site, particularly to the residential areas to the south. There's very little coverage there right now. If you go taller, it doesn't really increase the functionality of the height. It works at its height. A site like this would be modified in the future as technology changes and things get upgraded. We'd come file an application. And this one would most likely, meaning we don't know what those technologies look like in the future,
Right.
would be modified with antenna and radio equipment swaps at the antenna level, meaning it could be upgraded when technology changes and improves without additional height to provide additional coverage and network capacity.
Without additional height beyond your 63, should that get approved, you could maybe get more power from your...
It would be unnecessary. Be unnecessary for the proper function of the height. Going taller is not always better for a network. There becomes a height where it functions properly and covers the needed area without, and going taller would create other issues.
There was a letter that we received concerned about parking and how I mean, it removes a parking space, or it moves, I should relocates a parking space. But in terms of servicing it, how often would you be parking in that area? What kind of disturbance to the neighborhood? I think that was the concern in one of the letters we received to the business neighborhood.
A technician in a single pickup approximately once every 1 or 2 months would be coming to the site for a few hours. They could park in any available parking stall. They don't have to park right next to it. Cell sites for general maintenance are designed to be maintained by a single technician carrying a tool bag. And that's not because of like a site like this, but we also put equipment on roofs and in other places. So the equipment is, carry-in by a technician. They would park, go inside the facility. It has a sliding gate rather than an opening gate. So even if a car was parked in that adjacent stall, they could still get into the facility. All the clearances around the equipment are in the facility, could be maintained without any impact outside of it. Approximately once every 1.5 to 2 years, there would be a lift necessary to maintain the antennas up on the tower. And that is something that typically a day or two of work that would take some adjacent space to the tower. That's infrequent maintenance.
What neighbors could expect. And back to Darcy, is the parking spot that's been relocated, we haven't lost one, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been relocated. How does that work into that area circulation? I mean, same size?
Right, it has been relocated, so there's no net loss of parking. And the parking is relocated to an adjacent building. If you look at, I believe I even have an extra slide, there is enough distance for maneuverability. I think that just generally how the parking is nestled in between the two buildings was already not the best. Everybody's going to have to back out, but it's not creating any condition that I guess isn't already there with parking. Let's see, I think I have. So
and maneuverability, yeah.
Yeah, it's already kind of a unique kind of cove, and so with relocated parking, there's still enough maneuverability to make a turn and to get out of there. But I think as it's designed, it's already kind of tight.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Conley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my question was going to be similar on the parking. With I assume only one parking space was taken for this, and it's being replaced. I didn't know it was going to be replaced. Where is the replacement located at?
So if you look on, does this have a pointer? So
immediately south
right,
of the enclosure.
So the enclosure is going to take up basically this stall and then this planter.
Right.
And then just immediately south of it will be the relocated parking stall.
Okay. Because it takes up more space to the west, then you can create another parking spot to the west of where that car is maybe? Is that what you're saying?
Right, so there's,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the parking stall will be over here. I mean, it's still, there's enough width between the edge of this, it's basically a parallel parking stall
I
against
see.
the building.
Yeah.
And there's still enough distance from, between the building and then that parallel stall for
Yeah, I
then
could see how that would
cars
work, yeah.
and I had engineering, this was one of my very early questions with the
Mm-hmm.
plan check, and I did ask engineering to take another look at it to make sure that they were comfortable with it and they were okay with the way it was designed.
Yeah, where I was going to go is you have maybe a conditional requirement on the existing facilities that had to have X amount of parking, and I assume we're still satisfying the parking requirements for the use of the buildings adjacent to this?
Yes, I did not go into
Yeah.
the analysis of what the parking is for the existing buildings as that was already predetermined, and since there's no net loss, being that this is a facility that's only needs, maintenance once every, couple months, it's not requiring any new parking. It's considered, for the most part, unmanned.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Marlowe, any questions?
Yeah, we got a letter. There's concerns. I don't know obviously you guys put these around people all the time. I guess I'd like just to understand, did you guys talk to all the business owners? Obviously the property owner can make whatever decision they want with their property pending, approval, but was there a consensus above the business owners? And I guess more than anything, just to, echo the comments made by a business owner in there, they had some challenges with working near it and what that looks like. And I'm assuming there's no safety issues, but I'd be curious to know what that looks like just to ease the concerns of the people who spend most of their day there.
Considering those questions raised, we came prepared to talk about that, sir. David Witkowski will address your question.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is David Witkowski. I'm the owner of Oku Solutions. We are a telecommunications consulting company. I am, in terms of my credibility in this topic, I serve on a committee within the IEEE, which is the Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineers. That committee, which is known as the TC95, sets the standard C95 family for electromagnetic safety that is adopted by governments around the world and is used as the basis of the FCC's guidance. So basically what I'm saying is my group sets the standard. We're well familiar with what we've created as well as what the FCC has adopted. As part of our engagement on this topic, we have reviewed the electromagnetic engineering report that was produced by Christopher Stolar, dated 4 December 2023. He is a licensed professional engineer in the state of California. We did our own analysis on this topic. We find no reason to question Mr. Stolar's findings. All levels, including on the ground and adjacent roofs, are within the safety margin that is established by the C95 as well as the FCC. There is, at 52 feet in the air, an exclusion zone around this, but nothing intrudes into that exclusion zone. I looked at the letter that was written by the business owner, and he expressed concern specifically about cancer. There have been numerous studies on this topic. Cellular phones, of course, have been around for 30 years now. If cellular phones, cell towers were causing cancer in the population, we would expect to see those numbers going up over the course of that 30 years, considering how we use our phones, considering how many cell sites there are, our use of Wi-Fi, our use of Bluetooth, cordless phones, all of the electronic devices that we use in our daily lives. If that was causing cancer, we would see it in the population after 30 years. This is what we refer to as a cohort. None of the cohort studies that have been done, and there have been half a dozen cohort studies done over the last 20 years, none of them have shown a trend towards cancer in the population. So with respect to the business owner, if he was talking about Verizon technicians coming down with cancer, that was not caused by the RF in the environments in which they were. I'm happy to answer any of their questions that you may have.
Any other commissioners have any other questions?
No, I think that was an appropriate thing to discuss. I just wanted to make sure that we address that on the record. So I agree, we are getting blasted with signals all the time, and I appreciate you coming prepared to answer that question.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Davis?
Darcy, that same letter, concern about trash enclosures being impacted, was that looked into?
Yes, so I had a couple other backup slides. So this is from Google Street View, so you can see in pink is really the kind of the area of where this facility will be going, and beyond that, behind that vehicle, there is no the trash enclosure stops really at that parking stall, and so there will be access to that fenced enclosure beyond, even with the new wireless facility. It is something, though, that, I think inches will matter, and so we could add a condition that, we'll have to review with the building permit, the site plan, but we would not want to create a situation where you can't access that. So if the Planning Commission does have a concern, we could certainly add that in to make sure that the plans are, taking that into account per scale, as it wasn't really reflected on the site plan. And then here's another trash enclosure that's at really the entrance to this parcel. But I think the concern is largely, is it going to make this, unusable? I don't think so, but we can address it with
Yeah, I think the letter
plan.
was concerning block 2 of our trash enclosures, so I just wanted to make sure that staff had factored that in. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing no other comments from the commissioners, we'll put this out for public comment. Is there anybody that would like to speak on this? Is anybody on the line, Marcy?
No, there's no callers.
Nope, there is a gentleman there. Thank you. Come on up to the podium and state your name. Thank you.
Hello, so my name is Luis Malgoza. I own Diamond Detail. We're just a spot on before this truck right here. My main concern is we park trailers there and we move them out of the way so UPS or any delivery come in and out. That's not really a big issue. If we have to figure it out, I'm pretty sure we'll figure it out. My main thing, I have no idea how cell phone towers work or satellites or anything. So as soon as I heard, I didn't even know there was a meeting today. I hear you guys talk about how do you guys want it to look, how big, tall, even the house, what kind of texture. My concern is the safety. I hear somebody saying the Verizon workers don't have any issues, all that, and then I hear someone else saying it takes a few minutes or hour to come and service. Me and the other guys around there, we're going to be there 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, a couple days out of the week. My kids come and we go right to that building right behind. That's wall to wall. We have, the owner was trying to be here, but he couldn't. He didn't even know about the meeting. He has basically 2,000 up to 2,500 kids and adults come in and out from that building all week, especially Saturday and Sunday, because they do soccer tournaments. My kids go there. So we wait until after work, and then my kids go and play there. I have no idea the health risks of that. That's my worst fear. The parking, the moving, I guess we'll figure it out. But to hear you guys talk about how it looks, the tree, how big and that, it makes me a little scared to know I'm going to spend there 12. I could move, but I love that place. My business, I just moved there about 3 years ago. I love everything about it. I don't know if it'll benefit me from cell phone service, from internet, but the health, that's what scares me. I'm pretty sure the technicians from Verizon didn't spend 8, 12 hours stuck to that place. I've been there for 3 years, so times that, how many hours, that's a lot. So that's my main concern. I don't know what kind of study you guys could do or not. It sounds like it's already approved, but that's my main concern. If it's already approved and we work there, I don't know, do we get something? Do the kids coming in and out, so many kids exposed or adults? That's my main thing. You guys kind of touched it a little bit, but it just seemed like it was just brushed and then out of the way. So I'm going to be there. I guarantee if it was your guys' backyard, you guys would say no. I'm not saying I don't know the goods or bads, but if it was in your backyard, I'm pretty sure you guys wouldn't want to be there. So I don't know if we get more information about that or if it's already approved or done.
Thank you. We'll try and get your questions answered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? And Marcia, you said no one's online?
No callers.
Okay, bring it back to the commissioners. Would like to address those questions. Does the applicant have some information to address the public's comments?
David Witkowski, Oku Solutions. When we do our work within the IEEE on the topic of safety, we look at hundreds, if not thousands, of studies on this question. We look at the question of trends in the population. We look at in vitro studies. We look at mammalian in vivo studies. We look at a variety of studies that are done, both that are considered not high quality as well as that are considered high quality. And from that, we assess our opinions and we set the standard based upon that. It's true that there are studies out there that have claimed to find adverse effects. The vast majority of the studies that have been done have found no adverse effects. So on the balance in science, we ask the question, if I get 1,000 studies that claim negative effects and I have 10,000 studies that claim no negative effects, then I have to say, if these studies are high quality, that we would say that there is no effects and there are probably things wrong with the studies that found or claim to find effects. With respect to the commenter, I climbed towers for years. I have a lot of friends that climbed. We spent a lot of time in high RF environments. I don't know a single one. I mean, this is anecdotal. I appreciate that. Not a single one of my friends has experienced any kind of health effects from that. I've not experienced anything. I don't see any trends in the technician population. I don't see that there's a big cohort of tower techs that are out there developing cancer, perhaps at a young age. So I think what we need to do is we need to explore or allow for the fact that these studies have been done. This is actually one of the most studied topics in medicine. It's been studied since the late 1950s, kind of coming off the end of World War II. This became a topic of discussion in the medical community. And over that ensuing time, which dates back to before I was born, they've been looking at this, and nothing in the high quality literature, nothing in the high quality science has found any effects. And I realize that the population has concerns, and that's something that we continue to see over the years, and that's something that I think maybe it just takes time. I'm not sure. I mean, in the late 1800s, when electric lights were new, there were people who would refuse to go into a building because they were afraid of electric lights. It took some time for people to be okay with that. Nobody walks into a building right now and says, oh my God, there are electric lights, I can't go in that building. But that's because we're used to them. Maybe over time, maybe in my grandchildren's generation, then we'll be okay with all of this. But for right now, we have to rely on the studies that have been done. And in my experience in the work of the IEEE, ICES, and the CA95, we find no evidence of issues. The studies all point to safety.
All right, thank you. Commissioners have any other comments or questions at this time? Commissioner Marlowe?
Well, I did a bunch of research while hearing just a comment, and the main two things that come up are people are concerned about health issues, and there's no evidence that states that there is challenges, just from my quick little research. So I do see the point. I do see the fear where that could come from. I think that there's a decent amount of evidence that points that it's not. I think it's kind of a weird location to put it, kind of shoved in there with all those businesses. I'm not a huge fan of that. So I struggle with that a little bit, and I'm curious to what the other commissioners have to say. So I see it from both sides. I think that, cell signal's good, but I also find it to be a bit of a interesting place to pick to put the tower. So.
Any commissioner comments? I had a question maybe for the gentleman, and I apologize, off the top of my head, I can't remember your name. Is this, how long have they been putting, I know we've approved other sites around town, but how long have you guys been implementing these types of sites throughout the area in California per se?
Verizon Wireless has been operating its license since, I believe, 1984. Personal communication services, the higher bands of frequencies that are used on this tower were licensed and have been in use since, they were licensed in 1995. Networks in this area went online in 1997 using those frequencies. I've been working in San Luis Obispo County, building sites, modifying sites since 1995. It's a technology that is prevalent. It's in use. If you go back to the network maps, you could see that there are existing sites that are on air, and this is fitting into the existing network, and that is due to the demand that comes from people using their devices on the network, which requires better signal, more network capacity. So this is in response to the use of the public of their wireless phones to, we all want good service. And that's what this is going to do, is maintain quality service in the area and improve service where people are using their phones now, not just in commercial areas, but in residential areas. To the, like what's going on generally in the area, I believe it was the 26th of September, we were before the County Planning Commission for a project on the north side of Cuesta College that was approved. That will provide service to that residential area and to the college, improve service there, which is just to the northwest of this location. We're currently working with the city on another facility at the Paso Robles Airport to replace the beacon tower. I know that came before you several years ago. This is a new rendition of that project that was put on hold due to various reasons having to do with changes in the economy and COVID. But it's back. So there's been a steady building and increase in wireless facility numbers over the last few decades to meet customer demand for service. As to the comment that was made of, why here in this location? If you look at the land uses in this area and think about it, if staff has an air photo, you can see it. It's very prevalent. North of this location is commercial, but it's downslope. South of this location, starting a few blocks, is residential that goes on quite a distance. So to provide service into that area, this is in that commercial area, up on the hill where it will provide service into the residential area and enhance service in the commercial area. And that is what the network map shows, where you're looking at the improved service in the other service. So by increasing by this location, putting it here, you provide enhanced service in the commercial area and in the residential area. The other properties, if you look at that air photo, the uses are similar other than the vacant land, meaning you can see buildings, parking lots, well-used properties, that type of use. So it's here, it does not take any parking, it relocates one stall. It's well screened by the existing buildings, existing trees. It doesn't stand out all by itself. That was the rationale before looking here as opposed to other locations. If it was to move south, you would be in a single family residential neighborhood. If it was to move north, it would need to be much taller to see over the hill to the south into the residential neighborhood. So it's where we were talking earlier about proper height for function. If we were to move the site to cover this site serves both areas at the same time. If we were to move it, we'd need multiple sites to provide that same coverage, or a much taller site to see over the low hill that this site is on. So, sir, if there's any other part of your question I missed,
No, I appreciate that. I was just trying to get a sense of how long these have been into populated areas, and I think the gist of that was over a decade.
Over 4 decades.
Okay. Okay, thank you, and I appreciate the extended explanation for Commissioner Marlowe there. Do we have any other discussions, or do you have a motion at this point? Commissioner Kogler.
One more question on that theme, because I would have to confess I didn't think that much about the safety aspect, because I have seen both, that there may be long-term effects that still need to be studied, but for now the data shows, as you've stated. Do we have in the city other installations where we have this density of people right underneath it on a daily basis?
So I might see if Katie, if anything comes to mind of any more dense areas where we've recently approved conditional use permits for wireless communications facilities. The ones that are coming to mind, the one in the densest area would be, I think, Spring Street. Katie, maybe you can remind me the location of that one.
The two wireless towers that I worked on most recently, one is on Commerce Way, and there's a resident, it's an industrial zone. Of course, there's some vacant lots adjacent, but those will be infilled relatively soon. We've got building permits in for additional buildings, and then there's a residential zone just to the east. The other one that I worked on was on North Spring, and it's, kind of a strip of commercial along Spring Street, and then it's a dense residential zone just to the east of that as well.
Any other comments? Any of the motions?
And just one more.
I'm sorry. 1 second. Go ahead.
So in downtown, I know we have we have a church building just right off of, well, I'm going to say like 14th and Park. We have a church building where there's antennas in the parapet of the building. So, our west side is pretty dense. And then we also have by the clock tower on 12th Street.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. Did you have a question? Okay. Yeah, I understand. You had a question? Yeah, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, state your name. Can you come up here and state your name, please? Thank you, sir. We're going to
and my warehouse is the one right on the left where the vans park. So my question is, during the construction, how long does it take? We have semis that come in and deliver pallets and, throughout the day. Sometimes it's 2 or 3. We have UPS that comes every day to pick up parts. So during the construction process, are we going to be able to, run the business? That's one of my biggest concerns. And the health, of course, which Lewis brought up.
Okay, we'll get that answered for you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments while we've got this? Would you like to go ahead and answer that? And we'll go ahead and close the public comment again.
To answer the construction timing takes approximately 2 months. That is not all construction activity. That includes the construction of the facility, the tuning of the facility, where there will be nobody there. That will be electronic and remote tuning. With regard to the impacts during construction on the other people who operate businesses in this commercial center, it would need to be coordinated. We do this on a regular basis, and that is just simply working with your neighbors during it, scheduling deliveries of concrete, those types of things, when it would be less impactful to them, coordinating those days in advance, working through that as a general construction project does, to work with people to limit the impacts to them. So we do that on a regular basis. Typically involves, when we get to a construction phase, meeting, in this case, we would tell the property owner, we'd ask them to tell their tenants, we'd meet out there with them, explain what we're doing, hear how they operate their businesses, and work out those times. We're limited only in that respect by city limits on construction hours. But typically things early in the morning, construction pour starting at 7, those types of things to get it taken care of before real activity starts on the property are done and typical.
Thank you. Okay, back to the commission. Do we have a motion or do we have a further discussion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the project by adopting draft resolution PC 24-XXX based on findings and subject to conditions of approval.
Commissioner Conley, do we have a second?
I will second.
Commissioner Neal with the second. Roll call, please. Oh, is there any further discussion? Did you have some further? No? Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Neal,
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Marlowe,
Aye.
Chairperson Christensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Great, thank you. Okay. Moving on to agenda item. I apologize, I lost my place here. Let's move on to agenda item 3. Conditional use permit and site plan review to allow 12 residential units in the office professional zoning district. And do we have staff report?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chairperson Christensen. As you said, this is a residential project proposed on 12th Street, 321 12th Street to be exact. It's been dubbed the 12th Street Pocket Village. So location, I think there was the incorrect vicinity map was included in your staff report. I do apologize. So again, this is on the west side of town, west of Vine Street and between Olive and Chestnut Street on 12th Street. There is a vacant lot on this stretch of 12th Street. There's actually 3 underlying parcels. So as we talk about the parceling on the lot this evening, from the left to right on your screen, you've got lots 8, 9, and 10 of the block from the original subdivision of the city. And so some of the density is driven by the fact that there are actually 3 legal lots on this site. Here's a glimpse at the site. It was formerly developed, but it's been vacant for about 2 decades. And so this is along 12th Street. Here's a glimpse at the architecture of the project. It's a Spanish Revival style with stucco siding and clay tile roofing. We'll jump into the architecture in a moment, but just wanted to give a glimpse of that before we get started. So this is in the OP zoning district, the office professional zoning district. The office professional, as the name would imply, is intended to be for office uses. The office professional zoning here along 12th Street was carved out of an existing residential neighborhood. There was a time when there was a high demand for office uses and not as high a demand for residential uses. Of course, we've seen a flip-flop in that in the economy, whereas some articles on the national level have called our current demand for office an office apocalypse, because after COVID, there's been very little demand for new office space, and even existing office spaces are having a hard time staying full. And so the intent of the OP zoning district is to allow these office uses within the residential character of the neighborhood. So allowed in the OP zone are typical office type uses, even art galleries, and then 1 residential unit per parcel. Conditionally allowed uses are things like churches and slightly more intensive uses, and then more than 1 residential unit per parcel is also allowed. In this section, this is some language from the OP zoning district that the granting of a conditional use permit should depend upon the specific land use that's proposed, its relative location as it relates to established neighborhoods and residential patterns, and the ability and degree to which neighborhood compatibility concerns can be resolved. So those are some of the standards by which the Planning Commission should be judging this project. Essentially is allowing these additional residential units compatible with this neighborhood. So project history, as I've already alluded to, the site was a residential care facility that I believe that care facility had been hobbled together by some existing residences. And when the current owner purchased the property in the early 2000s, that facility was closed and was demolished in about 2002, 2004. The DRC reviewed the proposed project 2 times. They had a lot of questions and so wanted to have some of those answered before they moved the project on to the Planning Commission. There's a list of some of the items that were heavily discussed at the first DRC meeting, which was back in April. At that time, there was only one pedestrian path from 12th Street, which didn't seem logical for how the pedestrians are likely to use the site. One of the biggest concerns was about garbage. As we all know, our garbage in our homes, we all now have 3 bins and are supposed to be using our green waste bins for our green waste. There's, some new legislation at the state level, and so we are finding on many projects where there's density that garbage is becoming more of it is a design characteristic that we have kind of left until building permit phase in the past, and now we're finding that it's driving design a bit more than it used to in the past. And so the project went back and figured out a way to have better garbage collection, a more defined garbage collection area, so that all of these units will have shared garbage, and then the garbage collection company will be able to come from the alley, and so we won't have a prominent garbage area, and garbage bins left along 12th Street. So that'll all happen at back of house along the alley. The DRC also wanted to see more detailed landscape plans and some justification for both the parking and how storage was going to be addressed, and then personal storage, I should say, and then long-term management of the common areas. As I said, the applicant kind of went back to the drawing board and did work on all of those items, and brought the project back to the DRC in August. The DRC did request that conditions of approval be included, and that the Planning Commission be provided enough more information regarding long-term management of common areas and screening of private belongings. And so there are some conditions in the draft resolution that would address both of those concerns. So jumping into the site plan, as I said, there are 3 existing lots, underlying lots. So we've got Lot 8, Lot 9, and Lot 10. I'm going to go through all the different units and the density that's proposed on these lots. I've tried to color code it, so hopefully it's somewhat reasonably understandable. So first, what is allowed on each lot without the Planning Commission being involved. So on this site, the project could have 1 single-family residence on each lot. So those are outlined in the darker orange color, and that would come to 3 units. In addition, per state law and our local ordinances, you would be allowed to have 1 detached ADU as well. So the blue ADUs that are outlined would also be allowed. So what you see right now highlighted would be allowed by right without coming to the Planning Commission. 1 unit or 2 units on each lot, single-family residence, and an ADU. The applicant is requesting a CUP, so all the orange units that I'm going to bring up next are basically what is being requested of the Planning Commission this evening. So these orange units are those that would be that are requested per a use permit. So this is really where the Planning Commission has discretion. Are these units compatible with the neighborhood? If the Planning Commission approves these units, it does also entitle the project to an additional ADU on Lot 8. And so here's where we end up with the 12 units. We've got the 5 units that are requested by the conditional use permit, and then the 6 that are allowed by right. But with those conditional use permit units, it does bump it up to 12 with that second ADU on Lot 8. So a total of 12 units is what's proposed, 4 on each lot. So we've already seen this perspective, a really high quality design, some really nice Spanish Revival architectural detailing, the smooth stucco, the inset windows. They're going to use real clay tile roofing, and then the heavy timbers at the balconies and patios, and then the arching features as well, all making a really nice cohesive project. Here's another image also from 12th Street, but now we're looking more to the northeast. These are this is, I think, the unit that's in the very center of the project. It's got some nice curved features as well. Colors and materials, I've already alluded to some of this, but a smooth stucco finish. They're going to use dark aluminum windows. They're going to use real clay tiles, and then the wood trellises. So it'd be white, but primarily white, with the dark windows and the red clay tile roof. I did unfortunately omit the civil plans from the staff report. Those were provided to you today as an addendum. And when we get to the recommendation, staff is recommending that you include the civil plans as attached, or excuse me, as Exhibit D to the resolution, and we can discuss that as well. I've included here the preliminary grading plan, which shows you some of the on and off site improvements that will be required. We'll jump into conditions in a bit here, but the project will be one of the largest improvements they'll be making is they'll be paving the alley from Olive Street all the way to the western edge of the project. So this is currently a dirt alley, and there'll be a significant amount of paving and an alley approach on Olive Street as well. Looking at some other concerns that both the DRC and the staff has been reviewing on this project. The first review of the DRC did when the project first went to DRC, there was only one pedestrian path from 12th Street, just this one here on the east side of the lot. The applicant did add a second pathway from to 12th Street, which is just a logical way where people are going to walk no matter whether there's a path there or not. So it'll just make for a nicer, more finished project. So that walkway was added. And then, as I said, the garbage collection area was a change also. And so as you see in the red box at the top of the screen, there is now a garbage collection area that has sufficient storage area and capacity for all of these units. And then this has been reviewed by the local garbage collection company. We actually met out on site to make sure that the truck would be able to make the turns needed to make it into that alley, and everything. You know, it's tight, but it is possible. The Uptown Town Center specific plan and just sort of what we want to happen on the west side is the alleys are intended for service uses, and so we do have hope as the west side densifies that we continue to see garbage collection coming from the alleys, so that it doesn't clutter the front of projects. Parking is, of course, always a concern with these denser projects. You can see on the left, we've got the different lots, lot 8, 9, and 10, and the units that are proposed. So for lot 8, the parking requirement is 4 spaces, and then on both lots 9 and 10, 6 spaces are required, which totals 16. The applicant is providing 16 parking spaces. Those largely are 12 of the 16 parking spaces that are provided as tandem parking spaces. The municipal code does allow tandem parking to be approved actually by the Development Review Committee or today by the Planning Commission. As a part of that review, the Planning Commission should consider whether or not tandem parking is appropriate for the specified use and the site. And so it is possible to approve those tandem spaces, but this is one of the considerations to take into account. The applicant did provide this parking justification, which was something that was requested by the first DRC meeting, or after the first DRC meeting. They were asked to justify the number of parking spaces, and so this is the response. It is true that by state law, accessory dwelling units that are located within a half mile of a transit stop are not required to provide any on-site parking, and so the ADUs that are proposed are not provided with any parking in this project. The number of parking spaces it does comply with the requirement for single-family units, and then tandem parking. This was the applicant's response to the request for tandem parking, and just that staff had given some initial response or initial feedback that the project was well designed. The landscape plan, I've got a lot of detail in this slide. I'm going to kind of move through it fast, but we can come back to it again. The first DRC did not see a complete landscape plan, and so a lot of these details were provided between those two meetings. So I'm going to focus in first on kind of what's proposed in the front yard. It's a really nice mix of low water use plants, but things that provide also a lot of color. And so you can see the arrows are pointing to some of the different plant selections, including more pink colored yarrow, some manzanita to provide some taller elements, ceanothus that has the purple flowers, as well as the lily turf, which has some nice color pop to it as well. In the more central front yard, here's some of the plant selections. Some were red-colored plants. That same yarrow is used consistently through the, all the different the lots, and then some California fuchsia as well as dwarf olive. Again, some nice low water use plants with some nice pops of color. The applicant has also provided a fencing plan, so you can see some different colors have been imposed over the site plan on the left side. Those colors correspond with the colors now on the fence wall details. So the taller wood fence is indicated by the blue lines, and you can see where those are proposed essentially along the perimeter of the site, and then in between the detached units would also have those 6-foot fences. There are some low stucco walls around the kind of front yards of the detached units, and then there's use of the metal gates that will match the window materials as well. There is no specific storage requirement in the office professional zoning district, but as we know, multifamily projects are not really envisioned for the OP district, and so staff had worked with the applicant to try to provide storage that's commensurate with a multifamily development, which would be 250 cubic feet for each unit. The applicant did show an area that would be available for the detached units to have storage space, but they're not showing any sort of an enclosure for those spaces. There is a condition of approval to address that. So when the project comes in for building permits, the condition would require that the applicant provide at least 250 cubic feet of enclosed storage space that would be that would meet the standards of for a multifamily development. So that's in the draft resolution that you have this evening. So these are the areas that were indicated on the site plan as a possible area for outdoor storage. And so the condition would require the applicant to work with staff to provide enclosed storage. The DRC had questions about the long-term management of the common areas. As I've indicated multiple times, there are 3 underlying lots. The applicant does, with underlying lots, you do have the legal right to sell them separately. And so the DRC and staff as well have concerns about long-term management of those common areas. The applicant did provide some potential ways for those shared spaces to be addressed. But the kind of final method has not been nailed down yet. So there is a draft condition of approval in the resolution that would require the applicant to provide recordable documents that could be reviewed by the city attorney and the community development department to make sure that there is availability so that all the properties could access their parking and the garbage, and then even just the pedestrian pathways, as well as the utilities that will cross over the property lines. In order to approve the project, the Planning Commission does need to make some findings. These are conditional use permit findings. They need to find that the project isn't detrimental to the neighborhood, that it won't be detrimental to improvements in the neighborhood either, or the general welfare of the city, that the project isn't detrimental to the city's efforts to revitalize the downtown, and that it's compatible with the goals and policies of the zoning district in which it's located, and then also that the project is architecturally compatible with the historic character of the neighborhood. There are some historic structures in this zone, or in this neighborhood. There is OP zoning in the few blocks around the property, but there's really only, I believe, 2 businesses, 2 office type uses within the kind of 2.5 block area that encompass this office professional zone. Staff is recommending the Planning Commission find the project exempt from environmental review as a Class 32 categorical exemption for infill projects. The project really is a true infill project. This is, entirely surrounded by other urban uses. The project is, these are the requirements to approve a Class 32 exemption, that the project's consistent with the general plan, that it's within city limits and it's less than 5 acres. It certainly is that. That the site has no value as habitat. This is, just an infill lot, and so certainly there's not valuable habitat here. The Planning Commission also needs to find that there's no significant effects related to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality. There is a notice of exemption provided in the draft resolution, and it provides some anticipated traffic numbers, which do not rise to a significant level. And then finally, the project needs to be found to be adequately served by utilities, and that is the case here. There are some conditions of approval included in the draft resolution. There's some architectural features and the 2 pedestrian pathways that are requirements for the project. If the applicant wants to change those, they would have to come back to the Planning Commission for approval of that. Similar to the previous project I presented, dark sky rated light fixtures on the exterior of the building would be required. We've already discussed the storage requirement. A condition of approval number 9 would require that all the tandem spaces would be assigned to a single unit. So whenever there's 2 spaces in a tandem orientation, they would have to be assigned to one residence. Any outdoor mechanical equipment would need to be screened. The applicant, and then moving into the next few conditions here, these are all engineering requirements. The first, number 14, is to remove the driveway approaches on 12th Street. Those were put in as a part of the 12th Street project a few years ago, and so those approaches would need to be removed. The applicant has requested to leave the pavers between where the eventual curb will be and the sidewalk, and staff feels that that's a reasonable use of the property. They could become little pocket park type areas or just a place to unload and so forth. And so the applicant would like to leave those paved areas in place and just remove the ramps and put real curbing there to keep cars from driving on those old approaches. Number 15 and 16 have to do with the alley approaches. We already saw on the grading plan, they will have to do a ramp from Olive Street into the new alley, and they'll be paving the alley all the way from Olive Street to the west side of the project. They'll also have to install a new fire hydrant on 12th Street, and then we already discussed the fact that they'll have to do some sort of maintenance agreement or homeowners association to address the common areas and how all the 3 different lots will work together. As always, the Planning Commission has options. The first is to approve the project by adopting the draft resolution. You could approve the project with modifications. You could refer the project back to the DRC or staff for additional analysis, or if you find that you can't make the findings, you could deny the project by adopting findings of denial. Staff is recommending that you approve the project by adopting the draft resolution, but it should be amended to include Exhibit D, which is the civil plans, and then you would need to renumber the notice of exemption as Exhibit E, and that would be based on findings and subject to the conditions of approval as we've discussed. That does conclude staff's report, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Does Commissioner, bring back the Commissioner, any commissioners have some questions of staff? Commissioner Neal.
So, Katie, I noticed that the civil plans that have been included were the previous iteration of the project. Do we really want to include those if they're not the correct plan?
You're right. The site plan was updated in the architectural sets, but the civil plans were not updated. It may be that we should add a condition that makes it clear that what's in the architectural site planning as far as the 2 paths and the garbage collection area, those are really the 2 major changes, was the path and the garbage collection area. Otherwise, I think the civil plans and the architectural plans are pretty close to matching, but if you disagree, we could certainly discuss.
Yeah, there is a change in the I guess that would be the northeastern duplex. It changes form a bit, and it changes a footprint as well. So I think we'd want to include that change. But that's it for me. Sorry.
Okay. No, perfect. Commissioner Coger, any questions? Commissioner Marlowe.
I was just reading the letter that was provided by the gentleman, and one of their comments is the bioswale off 12th Street is going to make 12th Street narrower, and I'm looking through here, and I don't see where the street gets any smaller. So I just wanted to validate, does the street actually shrink in size from that bioswale?
So no, the project will not be narrowing the street, but the city did do a project, I want to say 10, 15 years ago, where we took a very wide street, the right-of-way, I think is an 80-foot right-of-way, and we shrunk it down. There's the bioswale that runs along. There was some grant funding involved, and the city did a low-impact development where we put I want to say the road was narrowed by more than 20 feet to provide the bioswale that runs along the side, and then some different sidewalks and so forth. The road was narrowed at that time.
So the road would remain the size that it already is, but the concern would be that there's even more people parking there and it's already a narrow street. Okay, I understand now. Okay, that was my only question, is to get a understanding of what they were what they meant. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Conley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I noticed the letter also talks about parking, and the DRC was concerned about that as well. I noticed on one of the pages it shows the parking designation for each unit, and I think that's pretty much mitigates the concern with each unit on the tandem parking being assigned to the unit that it's responsible for. The second car would have to coordinate with the residences that live in the same facility, right? Yeah. But I noticed that some units have the pleasure of having side-by-side, so I would guess there might be a price difference maybe, or something on the ones that you enjoy side-by-side versus tandem. But I really don't have any concerns about that. I just wanted to address the concern in the letter. Is there, from a practical point of view, is there more of a tendency not to use the tandem parking because of the complexity, and is there any validity that off-street parking would be used?
Is that a question for staff? I'm sorry. Any other commissioners have questions of staff? At this time, Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure this is 100% for staff, but maybe it sets up a presentation by someone speaking to the project. I was on DRC the first time this came forward, and I thought it was a great project. I still think it's a very well-designed project, and it's made advances from that first meeting. I'm still concerned about a couple of quick things, and I'll put it in a question form. I'm wondering if the owner designers have thought about the screening issue, because putting dotted lines on a map and saying we'll work with them to do something there, fitting that within the density of this project and the architecture of this project, how does that work? I guess is a question. And then the other question I would have, it was stated that Paso Robles Waste was out there maneuvering a truck around, which is great. I'm still concerned about the trash because it uses weight instead of volume. It seems to me, yes, you can accommodate that much weight, but when people start recycling milk containers or whatever it is, it seems like it's going to fill a rather minimal number of trash bins. And are there provisions to have a second pickup that can be afforded to somebody who's willing to pay for it? Are there other solutions to the trash, I guess, is the second question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll have the applicant, the presentation. Would the applicant like to have any presentation? We're going to have the applicant give a presentation first.
Good evening, Commissioners. Pamela Giardini, and I'm the agent for the applicants, which are Ann Lannon and Jim Irving, who's sitting right here. And so when we first brought this project forward to staff, they were very excited about it and said it was sort of the poster child of how they wanted development, or how development should be within the downtown core area. Well, with being a poster child comes some problems. You kind of have to work them out as you go through the process, because we did kind of cross some new ideas. And I think, through DRC, we kind of fleshed them all out. And Commissioner Kogler hit on a couple that I'll address now. One of them was the tandem parking, and the tandem of parking is assigned to each unit so that each unit knows where it has to be in order to park. And the reason it is tandem parking, which we're not used to, I would have to say, is because otherwise we can't fit the density on the site. And as you know, that density in downtown core areas where it's a walkable community, you can walk to your job, you can walk to the restaurants, you can walk to retail, you can walk to the farmer's market or music in the park, is really great. So us Americans love our cars, but I think that when you live downtown, you're afforded the ability to not use your car so much, and tandem parking fits the density to this project, which we need infill and we need high density in downtown areas. For the trash collection, when we were in DRC and we realized 36 trash cans were going to be aligned out front, we all kind of gasped together. I don't think I've ever had a project where I had to analyze the trash. First time in 20 some years. So we did have the trash collection person out there. And all I can do to answer Commissioner Kogler's question is that there's a standard that the architects and civil engineers use to figure out per residence how much trash is generally generated, and that those are then were calculated by the architect into how much bins we would need, square footage of bins. So I know that it was done accordingly, that those calculations were submitted to the planning department, and I may be in your staff report, and that's the standard that we use for that, and that the trash collection was able to make it down the alleyway, we designed it to accommodate that. As far as the screening issue, it's 250 square feet, which is pretty small. We do have additional storage on lot number 8 on the most northwesterly corner, and then the other ones did need additional, or the DRC asked for additional storage on the interior or the other lots. And at DRC, we had the architect on the Zoom call, and he was saying that we would design something that was compatible with the architecture of the building that fit in, because I think the architecture of this development is really high quality. It's a very good looking, pretty architecturally designed buildings, a whole community around a fountain and pedestrian sidewalks. You don't want to mess it up with some ugly looking plastic containers, and so 250 square feet is actually pretty small, and we should be able to fit those in there pretty, easily with a design that's compatible with the architecture. And I think that was all. I mean, Katie always does an amazing presentation so that I don't have to bring my own slideshow, so my hats off to her again. She makes my job easy. And if you have any other questions, I'm here. Both Ann and Jim are here, and they might want to say something too.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Does the applicant want to make a comment before? It's up to, I'm giving you opportunity if you wanted to make a quick comment about the project. That way we can ask questions if we have any.
My name is Ann Ladden, and I'm here with my husband, Jim Irving, who's gone along with me on this project. It's the best location downtown, and I want to do something really special that works and makes sense. And you guys have all worked with us. Thank you all on the DRC for all the good advice. The trash question was like, yeah, thank you. And I think we had the trash company there, and I'm hopeful that that will work. It seemed like we had good advisors. Anyway, thank you very much for bearing with us, and I hope you can approve it soon.
So Jim Irving, and while I am currently a resident of Paso Robles, I am a native of Paso Robles, living on the west side out in Adelaide area. And so this is, my wife has been with me now 40 years here in Paso Robles, came from a big city to a little city and fell in love with it. So this has really been her dream. to create a beautiful spot here. This was the old hospital before it became residential facility, so it has a long history. And I think we've come up with a really good project that befits the town and the infill element of modern life. So we hope you approve it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioners have any follow-up questions at this time? Commissioner Davis, do you have a follow-up question?
Katie, so the storage units, are they dedicated per unit, or is that available for extra rent? How does that work? Is it HOA that would figure out how to manage those extra storage units outside?
So there currently on the site plan is shown storage for all of the rear duplex units. If you look, let me put so the storage, oops. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think the last question.
So there's 4 storage bins over here, and they're labeled for which unit they would go to, I believe. There's 2 storage closets, I should call them, over here. So those 6 would cover the 6 units in these 2-story buildings. The question became, how do these 4 here are detached? Where do these 4 units put their storage? And then this is another duplex. They didn't have a dedicated enclosed storage area. So the condition of approval would require them to provide some sort of enclosed storage for these front 6 units.
Yeah, okay, enclosed. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Commissioner Conley.
Yeah, that raises a concern. I would assume those would be outbuildings or out sheds. And I know this was brought up at DRC. Would the architecture of those sheds match the existing adjacent homes or complex?
Yeah, so the draft condition is there at the bottom of the screen, and yes, it would require architectural compatibility. Currently, it's drafted so that can be approved by staff. If you would rather those come back to the DRC, we could certainly amend the condition so that the DRC could review the architecture of those storage closets.
Yeah, my concern was that it matched. We didn't have some crazy looking sheds that don't match the community or the facility.
So the condition does read that it has to be screened from view using architecturally compatible materials subject to approval of the Director of Community Development is how it's currently drafted.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner questions? I think I had a question. I just have to go back to my notes. Katie, when this was discussed, I remember the first time on DRC, the question was about selling this off in various portions, and the applicant at the time wasn't sure what they were going to do. And I know that discussion created further discussion into how would they maintain all the intricate areas. And was there any detail discussed or provided in that notion, because they are 3 separate parcels? And so I know that was an issue at the time. And I don't know what was discussed at the next DRC meeting, so maybe you could update me on that.
Yeah, so the first part of this slide is how the applicant responded to DRC's concern. They did list several options that might solve the issue. The first would be to record easements for access to the storage areas and the garbage area, the utilities. I mean, this is doesn't include everything there in their response. Another option would be to record CC&Rs against all the properties that would run with the land and address all those things. And if needed, they could form a homeowners association. They have not decided exactly how they would address the issue, as where we landed at the second DRC meeting. So the draft condition of approval at the bottom of this slide is what's in the draft resolution, requiring the applicant to provide a recordable document for the allowance of adequate maintenance, access, and utilities across all properties to ensure common access needs. The written verification shall be reviewed and approved to the satisfaction of the Director of Community Development and the city engineer prior to the issuance of building permits. So we don't have a full solution, but we do have a condition that requires a full solution before we would issue building permits. Whether or not the Planning Commission feels like that's adequate is certainly for your consideration.
Thank you. Because I noted you had a note in there about a maintenance agreement, and I just don't think that that's going to suffice enough to say, because it is such an intricate project. the way that everything's laid out. I mean, it's a beautiful project. I agree with that. But my concern would be down the road. And I would want them to have the ability to sell off that portion, but I think it would really need to be detailed out on how that was going to happen. I just don't think a maintenance agreement would cover it, in my opinion. I think that would just be too minimal. Did you want to respond to the question? I noted you came up.
Sure.
Sorry.
Pamela Giardini again, agent for the applicants, and it's going to need legal counsel, to be honest with you, to go through, because if you think of like a shopping center where you've got parking that, you know, when you park at Trader Joe's, you also go visit the, you know, the meat market or the everything else. So you have cross easements there. So it's going to require the surveyor and the legal counsel to draft up those kind of easement agreements, and then also how the CC&Rs, and those will run with the land. So once you record the document, it runs with the development, it runs with the land. Even if you change owners or it's sold off separately, those CC&Rs run with the land.
Okay, I appreciate that. So you understand, I appreciate that the applicant understands the concern that we have over something that's like that. And to that point as well, my other concern, and I know with the CUP comes the addition of the ADUs, comes the addition of the additional units, and there is no parking, and there's no parking required for the ADUs.
Correct.
But you don't get the ADUs without the CUP, and that's always been my viewpoint on it. Parking's always been an issue, as we talked about. I know we talked about in the DRC meeting, and I know we need infill downtown. 12th Street is tight already. That's why the trash cans were such a big issue. So I guess what I'm getting to is I would hope that the applicant in that process would have some consideration to the fact that the actual parking spots are used for parking. So I have a tandem driveway. So my wife and I, we do have to juggle, but we've gotten into a system, you know, at our residence. You know, she's home before me, she pulls in, we just work it. I just could see those filling up with stuff. I just don't want to see that. And then have all the parking spill out on 12th Street, and then they're walking in, and you have all that problem just because it can happen. So
that will be covered in the CC&Rs, where they won't be allowed to store you know, furniture, boxes, that kind of stuff in the garage, that it's to be used for parking only. That'll be enforceable. And so that's why, one, the CC&Rs are a good idea, and two, so that when the people are renting or purchasing these there, however that happens, they understand the limitations to that. And also the idea of putting in the additional storage units for each unit, so that you do have a place to store stuff outside of their house should that be needed.
Which I think is totally practicable. I mean, that's just something understood. One question I do have for staff in regards to the CUP, just kind of clarification for me, Katie, if you can. With that CUP, if we find that the parking is not being, on-site parking is not being used for on-site parking, is that kind of something that falls into the CUP as something the city can say, hey guys, you need to get your tenants to use the parking and not keep impacting the rest of the neighborhood with parking?
So in the conditional use permit, I don't currently have a requirement that the parking be used, nor do I have a condition in there that would preclude storage. So those may be things that you want to add. I mean, revoking a conditional use permit for residential uses would probably be tricky, because I mean, they'll be there. And, you know, we're not going to evict tenants, but certainly there would be remedies. You know, the use permit, they will have to follow their conditions of approval. There are, you know, civil remedies for that. And Andrew Fausto with the BBK is also online, if I have misspoken.
I appreciate that. So I guess maybe what you might have answered that question. You know, there are other nuisances aspects of that may fall under that aspect of a CUP. I know some of my other commissioners don't agree with me on the parking per se, but I really feel like, you know, infill comes with its congestion, and I get that, and it's a walking distance to town. But I just want that to be noted, that that's something that I would highly encourage, is for the parking to be for parking. With that, I don't have any other questions right now. So any other commissioners have any other questions before we send this out to the public for public comment? No? Okay. Seeing none from the commissioners, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? Please come on up to the podium and state your name.
Good evening. I'm Allison Dunlinger, and I live on Olive Street. right across the street from the entrance to the alley that will be used. I think this is an incredibly beautiful project. My main concerns have been parking. I was glad to see about the tandem parking and dark sky lighting. We really need more dark sky lighting in the city. I have lived out in the community or out of the city, and so when I moved into the city, it was kind of a shock with everybody, well, so many lights. But anyway, those are my only concerns, and I would like to say that you talk about walking, and I walked here tonight, and I will be walking home tonight. So that was one of the reasons why I chose the place that I bought. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Do we have anybody else with comments from the public? Marcy, do we have anybody online?
No callers.
Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion or motions. Do we have any further discussion on this?
Mr. Christensen, I hope I'm not out of order. There were several questions asked by commissioners before the public hearing. I don't know if you'd like for me to address those or.
No, I think that would be fair enough. Yeah.
Okay. So Mr. Kogler had two questions. I'm sorry, I apologize. Mr. Connolly had one question about tandem parking. And I mean, I can certainly say anecdotally that having tandem parking is inconvenient, as Mr. Christensen noted. But, you know, within a household, the hope is that you can, you know, ask your spouse or your teenager to go move their car so that you can run to the store. But certainly having, you know, a car behind your car is an inconvenience. But manageable within a household. So that's, you know, why one of the conditions of approval would require those tandem spaces only to be for one particular unit. And then Mr. Kogler did have two questions. The first, I'm not entirely sure I understood, but I believe it was about maintenance and the lots. I don't know whether or not the discussion answered that question. Maybe you could rephrase your question.
I think it was addressed by the applicant. The first question was simply, with storage being dotted lines on the plan, how do you actually implement that in the field? And I think there's enough effort here to say that everybody will work to see if that happens compatible with the architecture of the structures. Still seems like it's an awfully tight fit to me since it's building to building in here.
Sure. And then you did have a second question about garbage by weight, not volume. Our engineering department did look at the proposed quantities of garbage and was satisfied. It is possible to have multiple pickups in a week, and that was something that it was discussed by Paso Robles Waste and Recycle when we met on site. So if they find that the current design is not adequate for storage, they could get two pickups a week at a cost, as you said.
Thank you. That was really the answer I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you, Katie. I really appreciate that. I do have I did have a follow-up question, well, kind of a comment question in regards to the amended site plans here. So I guess it's more of a comment. I'm in agreement that we probably should want these to be the corrected items. So maybe, I don't know how if we would want to make that something that has to be done before, that staff can manage before permits are issued, or I'm not sure how my other commissioners feel about that, but I do agree that these should be corrected, the correct ones, if there's anything that's incorrect in there now.
Yeah, sorry, Dante Paganino, Development Review Engineer. We felt with the minor updates with the walkway and the trash enclosure that those could be handled in the permit process and didn't need to be done before coming to you guys. So that's
Great.
why.
I appreciate that. Okay. I don't think I have another question right now. Lose my train of thought. Sorry about that. Do we have any other discussions, or do we have a motion at this time?
I just have a comment. It's my understanding that this is a rental project, and I'm thinking that CC&Rs wouldn't really address necessarily the fact that your tenants may use one of their tent parking as a storage. So I think that hope that particular condition would be included in a rental agreement as it moves forward. But other than that, I was lucky enough to be on DRC for both times it came, and I think the applicant really addressed much of what we had asked in DRC as it came back to us the second time, and I'm a big fan of this project. I'd like to see it happen on 12th Street.
Great,
I'd
thank
just
you,
like to make
Commissioner
some
Neal.
comments too. I wasn't on DRC, so I got to see it with fresh eyes, and it's a beautiful development. And it is that infill that we're looking for. And as as we heard tonight, it's nice to have a community where you can easily walk to the downtown. So I think we've worked it. I'm ready to support this. I think the Spanish design is really, and I think you're an artist and I think you're passionate about that. So I just want to say, I think you have really good intentions with your project, and I'm inclined to support it. I think we've got a good project on our hands.
Well, I wanted to make a comment back in regards to Commissioner Neal's comment, because he is correct, and I agree with him on that. I would encourage you in your management contract, obviously, as parking for parking. I was more or less kind of notating the restriction moving forward. If it was to sell in parts, you'd have a greater ability to restrict that at that time. So I think the applicant understands that, but I do appreciate Commissioner Neal's comments on that. Any other comments from the commissioners at this time?
I'd just like to make a motion if there's no more comments.
All right, I'll just say one final comment. I like the project. It looks great, and I used to deliver papers there when it was the rest home. I don't know if you guys. Yeah, nursing home. I used to have to deliver papers there. So yeah. Anyway, my BMX bike. Right. I know. All right. So I'm sorry, Commissioner Marlowe. Would you like to make a motion?
I would. Just jumped on my page here. Hold on. Let me get back to where I was. Click one button and went the wrong way. Does anyone know where that?
It's on your main screen too.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the project by adopting draft resolution PC 24-XXX amended to include Exhibit D, civil plans, and renumbering the notice of exemption as Exhibit E based on the findings and subject to conditions of approval.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Commissioner Davis?
Discussion item, please.
Yes, good point.
I would like to ask the motion maker and the second if we could add a caveat that the architectural site plan will take precedence over the civil plan as included, as well as add a condition for requiring parking areas to be used for parking and not storage.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft resolution with the civil plans and renumbering notice, exemption E based on the findings. In addition, that the architectural site plan take precedence and the parking be only used for the parking to be only used for parking, no storage.
Any other discussion on that?
My second stands on the amended motion.
Okay, and my discussion, I'm glad you brought that up because that's what I was going to add. So it sounds like we're all good with that. Commissioner Neal, you're comfortable with that? Perfect. Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Marlowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Chairperson Christensen?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Good luck. And if we can take if I can make a motion here to take a 5-minute recess.
I move.
Okay, thank you. We'll be back with you in 5 minutes. Okay, thank you for that. We'll bring the meeting back to order. And so we'd like to move on to the next item on the agenda. Item number 4, Union Road Fire Training Facility on Union Road. And presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairperson Christensen. So this is the Union Road Fire Training Facility. This is a development plan amendment for an existing master development plan that we have for the training facility. Let's see if this will advance. I'm supposed to point. Okay. All right. So here's a location map. So the Fire Station 3 is at Union Road, and then where Ardmore Road wraps around. So kind of zooming in. So as we all know, the Fire Station 3 has been constructed. I believe they just had their grand opening ceremony. This site is really, we have a master development plan, which was approved back in 2021. And it contained 2 phases, which I'll get into. And then also with that development, the city had approved a mitigated negative declaration, which really included some mitigation for air quality and for biological resources. So as part of that master development plan was phase 1 was the Union Road Safety Training Center, so essentially Fire Station 3. Now that part of phase 1 also included their main parking lot fronting Union Road, outdoor training areas, on-site improvements, as well as frontage improvements. You know, all the landscaping. So phase 2 was originally going to be like a police yard. It has since been approved back in August of this year by the Planning Commission to be used as a corporation yard. So there's a variety of buildings that were approved when that came back to Planning Commission just not too long ago. So here we are looking at the existing fire station facility from Union Road. And this is from Google Street View, so it's not necessarily a current picture, but it does give the Planning Commission just some context as to, you know, what's existing out there. And this is at the corner of, Ardmore would be on the left right there. So the corner of Ardmore and Union. All right, so as I mentioned, in blue, we have the existing fire station training facility, and then in that yellow-orange color, that would be the future, the phase 2, which is the corp yard. And that was, Planning Commission looked at that back in August. So going back to the Fire Station Training Center, so one of the things that our fire department, they have some improvement goals, and they're mandated by the state to require certain fire training. The city does not currently have a training facility, and so they actually, we were rated by the Insurance Service Office, so there's an ISO assessment done, and the city received a 0 out of 35 for lack of a training facility. So our fire department is looking to amend the master development plan for phase 1 because it had previously called for a training, outdoor training areas. And so now, and we have Deputy Chief Harris here who can speak a little bit more to it, but essentially expanding that outdoor training facility to include the training tower, which I'll get into, and then also the training building, which I've highlighted in red on the site plan for you. So all of the frontage improvements on Union Road, those are already in, and so the area where the 2 structures would be behind the existing building, you know, whereas it otherwise would have just been paved area. And then the reason we don't see too much landscaping around the structure on the left is, of course, it will be used for fire, you know, training. So we'll jump into that here in a moment. So as I said, the project request is to amend the plan development, and that's been filed by the Paso Robles Fire and Emergency Services Department. So the details of it are a 3,600 square foot training building and then a 43 foot tall training structure. And then just the paragraph I have at the top kind of explains more about the timeline of when the Union Road Safety Training Center was approved. It was completed in March of 2024 and included, as I said before, the site grading, parking lot, driveways, stormwater management infrastructure, outdoor training areas, and landscaping, as well as those frontage improvements. All right, so now we're going to be looking at the training building. So this is behind the main building that fronts on Union Road. So DRC has seen this project. They forwarded it to the Planning Commission. It's essentially they're going to be matching the architecture of the fire station building, and so we have on here the different color and materials that they're proposing to use. So it's the stucco siding, and then the standing seam metal roof would be like the main material. Of course, we have that wainscot, horizontal lap siding, and then they do provide articulation on all sides of the building, but again, you're not going to see it so much from Union Road, but there are some slides that I show where you see it from different vantage points, probably more or less from Ardmore. So there's still quite a bit of articulation on the building, and I don't think there was much discussed at DRC on this building itself, but I think more so focused on the training tower. This is a little bit unique, but we are in a C3 commercial industrial zoning, and there are compatible surrounding uses such as Daniels Woodland. The site just behind this fire station property, we have an approved, mini storage. So this area, we are seeing a variety of uses. And so although it is unique to have essentially C-Train, this is what the fire department needs to meet the state mandates and to be able to provide their firefighters with the required minimum hours of live fire training. So Deputy Chief Harris can go into this a little bit more on why they chose this type of construction, but it is C-Train development, so they can be, as I understand it, if it needs to be replaced because it has been damaged during their training, that it is more cost effective to then replace just a pod, so to speak, or a C-Train, as opposed to something that is more structurally built. Put it at that. So the materials are intended to be, I think the DRC settled on a brown beige color, and it does appear that there is going to be some roofing, which would be a comp shingle roof, and it looks to be like a green color. So again, I might have, so this is Darren's project. I might have Randy answer any questions regarding the color palette for this structure itself. What I wanted to show you guys, which is also in your staff report, is just from Ardmore Road, what you'll see in terms of these new structures. So on the screen, this would be the courtyard buildings, and then this would be the vacant lot where the mini storage is proposed. So you can see the tower, and then of course this is the smaller building for the training. Okay, so this is from Union Road, and then yes, I have. So then that would be the 43-foot tall training tower, and then you can see the fire training building in that image. So another thing that happened was DRC members were asked to go out to the site, and instead of having a story pole, my understanding is that they had a lift that was set at that 43-foot height, so that the DRC members could see what it would look like from a distance compared to other buildings. And so there are a couple different photos that Darren took while you guys were out there, and just showing what the context would be for that 43-foot, which in that C3 zone, the allowable height is 50 feet. All right, so as I mentioned before, that this is an amendment to the original development plan for the master development plan to expand on that outdoor training area. And so there was an MND done and certified, and essentially what this all reads is that the conditions of approval that were part of that MND are going to be carried forward. So anything remaining would need to, that still hasn't been met yet with regard to biological mitigation for oak trees, or if there's any pre-construction surveys that would need to happen with this, that would still continue to happen. Largely, a lot of the mitigation was handled when the fire station construction, prior to that grading permit being issued, but that MND is still in effect, and this project would have to comply with all those mitigation measures. All right, so I think I would like Randy to come up and speak here, just planning after Randy speaks more to this. The Planning Commission does have several options. Staff's recommendation would be to approve the project, this plan development amendment, subject to the site-specific conditions of approval. And certainly the Planning Commission can make or ask for modifications, refer this back to staff for an additional analysis, or make findings to deny the application. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Randy.
Involved with the Fire Station 3 project and training grounds. This project is decades in the making for our training grounds. We've had other pieces of property, and this property was purchased specifically to have kind of a master plan development with a fire station and training grounds. What is unique on this project is that it's not just a fire training facility, but it's a public safety training facility, including the police department as well. With that said, it's not only going to serve the citizens of Paso Robles, but we have eyes on it being a regional facility. And that's such a key concept because there is nothing like this that exists on the Central Coast, especially when you look at, the overall umbrella of being public safety. The needs for this are huge. We do not have a local academy. Our closest academy to the north is in Monterey, and our closest academy to the south is in Lompo. So when we look at the regional aspect of this, we're looking at partnering with Cuesta College and actually having a local academy where we can have youth, kind of come up from high school to college and hopefully be able to get their public safety credentials, both police and fire locally. With that said, it's a very unique project, and I'm sure there's going to be several questions, but the overall scope of a fire training facility usually focuses on the tower. And that's because that's such a unique material and property that has to hold up to fire over time. And it used to be you'd build these giant concrete structures, and over the years of setting them on fire, the concrete actually starts to spall and starts to lose its strength. And so the industry overall has gone to metal sea containers, and I think Darcy said it best when she called them pods, because that's just what they are. Darcy, if you can go back to the rendering of the tower itself a little closer. Help me explain kind of what we're looking at here. That's perfect. When you look at the actual 4-story pod there, that is all different aspects of it, but none of that would actually be on fire. The fire boxes are the wings off to the sides because those would be switched out much simpler. Each box basically is going to be designed for moving the fire around, because if you train on the same thing time after time after time, you don't have the same quality of training. And so that's why there's different kind of wings to it. Also, when the wind direction changes, that's going to change how the fire and smoke funnels throughout the rest of the building. So when you look at the 4-story tower in particular, the first 2 floors have different designs. One's designed for a center hallway construction to mimic, most likely like a motel type environment. The other one is designed kind of a garden style construction, to where you would have a hallway on the outside and then doors going in. And then that 3rd floor is actually a movable wall facility that would not have any smoke or fire going into it. And that's mostly going to be used for search, and then also with the police department doing police entry tactics. And then that, it's hard to tell from this angle. There might be a better angle for it, but that 4th, there you go, perfect. Most of the facility is only 3 containers high. It's only the top container that sits a little bit higher, and the purpose of that is actually for that platform to be able to look into the search facility, and then also to meet our ISO truck operations, and then also rappelling off the side. So most of the facility is actually 3 units high as opposed to the 4. And then that's just simply a safety railing around the very top for students and instructors when they are on top, kind of monitoring and running evolutions. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the tower or the adjoining training indoor building that would facilitate training, both kind of pre-training and after-action training and reviews that they kind of go hand in hand together. Be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioners have any questions for staff or? Yes, sir. Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you. You talked about portions of this fireboxes that will burn. Maybe using this drawing, talk a little bit about where those are, and then there was some time spent on picking the paint for this.
Yes, sir.
Does the paint burn off or smoke deteriorate? Or, what's this going to look like after it's been used for a while?
So the maintenance of it is a critical piece to it. When we were there together, we did pick the color of the garage door so it would match. With that, you can get, some paint that withstands heat a little better than others, but ultimately the paint will burn off. Darcy, can you go back a slide where it shows the side profile a little bit better? There you go, perfect. When we're looking at those lower wings and with did you include the slide that shows what it looks like when it's actually burning that I submitted to Darren? So the plan that I submitted to Darren and Marcy, I believe it's on your email as well, shows the DRC had asked, hey, what does this look like on fire? We're talking a ton of smoke, a little bit of smoke, and I bring this up for this particular picture because the packet that we submitted did include our temporary training prop while we were doing a fire evolution to answer your question. And from that picture, you can actually see a little bit of the paint, actually on fire. And so what happens when we build a fire in these, we're not building a big fire. We're taking like one pallet, tearing it apart and making kind of a little teepee using a little bit of hay and a little bit of paper. So it really doesn't have a whole lot of volume of fire. So I say that because it's mostly smoke. There's usually just a corner of the container that gets significant enough heat that it actually has paint issues. It's not a whole 20-foot container that's subject to that amount of heat. So it's very small corners, but there would be maintenance for any part of the building that would need to get taken care of and upgraded over time.
Good. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, Randy, it's not really relevant to the structure or anything, but I think I heard you say training facility for police too. Will they be training? It's not just a fire academy.
That's correct. This is the Union Road Public Safety Training Center.
Okay.
Any other commissioners have any other questions? Commissioner Neal?
I just have a comment. I was on DRC and with my fellow commissioners on DRC that day, and we went out, and it was a beautiful 110 degrees. I think that may have been timing, so we'd stay inside most of the time. But once I got past this being incredibly ugly, and just knowing that it is a building built specifically for a function, and it is in a more industrial area, and the surrounding buildings. I got over its ugliness and understood its utility, and I think it's a nice addition to the city's abilities. So I think I was convinced on my DRC visit. And then I did drive around a little bit trying to spot the mast that was raised. And I did spot it on Union Road, craning my neck incredibly, driving north on Union Road. But other than that, I cannot see it from anywhere other than Ardmore and Union. So I was convinced at DRC.
Thank you, Commissioner Neal. Any other questions from commissioners for staff? Commissioner Marlowe?
Yeah, I just have a comment and then a quick question. I got to do a job walk one time to walk one of these. It was in Northern California somewhere where I think the walk was to replace pods or something like that. And they're pretty cool. Like we walked through it, it was charred and it was kind of interesting to see. So I think it's going to be a cool addition to the area. I understand it's not the most aesthetically pleasing, but I think it's got its own beauty in some ways to bring something, neat to the area. And then my question is just what's your timeline on this to, go out to bid, go execute the work, and when do you plan on having this operational, or your goal, I should say?
So my goal is to get an engineering application submitted this week. We're just looking for a couple extra details. Because of the uniqueness of this, we don't feel like we're going to find one contractor that's going to do the containers and the grading and dirt work required. So we're going to break it into the engineering and slab, and then go out to bid separately for the container modifications and assembly on site. But most of the container modifications are actually going to be done off site from what most container companies are telling me, and then they just bring in a finished product, stack it, and basically walk away in a short time period. We do not refer to this as a building. Being a fire guy and formal fire marshal, it's like This is not a structure. For us, it's a training prop, and it's something that's going to mimic, the real world conditions that we face. But yeah, it's ugly. I wouldn't even want to give it the term structure.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kogler.
Yeah, I'm curious, are these the containers that have been sitting on the site? Is that what this will be, or is this new containers that are brought in partially pre-assembled?
These are going to be new containers that are the 9'6", so they're considered the high cubes. That gives us a little additional headspace and volume to carry the smoke, and then also just the way that we line them with OSB, the high cubes are the preferred container. The containers on site will hopefully be utilized for storage. This is a master plan of training. This is not just one building, but we'll have, for instance, a trench rescue prop. We'll have a confined space props. This is in totality of everything the Department of Emergency Services does, not just.
So will the containers that are there now stay on site?
They'll stay on site, probably not configured as they are now, but they will be utilized for some configuration training.
And were those part of the original master plan, showing those containers being a component of this project?
The original master plan talked about the fire department training grounds and all the different specifics. There were no details provided at the time of exactly what those were.
The reason I'm asking is I raised the question of what were those doing there when we reviewed the site plan for the buildings. And I'm not sure how I interpreted the answer at the time, but I was not under the impression that you would be building this and then still have containers scattered on the site. That's visually a little more problematic. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Questions? I have a question, Randy. So, and this is just a lot of curiosity, and I'm sure you have a process for this. The wind direction is taken into consideration when you do these fires?
Yes, sir.
And is there certain directives for that in consideration of where that's going to end up going? And, I mean, you have some kind of control over that? I mean, smoke is smoke. It just takes off, but.
Yeah, well, typically, the air inlet side is not going to have any smoke on the leeward side, but the windward side would have, small quantities of smoke. What I did send to staff, if we're able to pull that up, is a picture, once again, of the prop, and it's, a wood-fired barbecue typically has about the same amount of smoke. It's fairly minimal in nature when you just burn one pellet.
Okay. Do you guys have to put, this is curiosity, do you put notices out when you're going to do these types of training, or is it just standard, you guys just run it?
So overall, I would say no, but yes to the immediately adjacent neighbors. So from an air quality APCD standpoint, we have licensing. We work with APCD. We make sure that we're doing it on kind of proper burn days for our. It's not like a dooryard burning, but proper burn days for our conditions. But we do work with the neighbors immediately adjacent because most likely, we don't want to cause panic.
Yeah.
So Autocraft next doors, for instance. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So that is the container on the far left actually is where the small fire is. It is very proximal to the set of double doors that we see there. And then the smoke is actually carrying through the two containers to mimic, kind of the fire path as it travels. So you can see the door is open on the back right corner there. And when you build a fire, when you have a door, that fire is going to flow that direction. So we play with the different doors and windows to actually kind of control the fire and, teach our firefighters when you open the front door, that's going to start channeling the fire. So very much how the fire is controlled is why, certain doors and windows exist, why we use certain containers, we use the wind to our advantage. But yeah, there's a multitude of ventilation techniques that operate with this. But you can see there's really not a lot of smoke that's generated per evolution.
Okay. That was the only questions I had. Any other follow-up questions from staff? Okay. We'll take it out to public comment. Is there anyone that would like to comment on this from the public? Anybody online, Marcy?
There are no callers.
Okay, bringing it back to the commissioners. Any other discussion? And or do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Chairperson.
Commissioner Neal.
I'd like to move approval of option 1, approve the project subject to conditions of approval by the following actions. Approve draft resolution A, approving plan development 21-04. I'll second.
Marlowe seconds. Do we have discussion on this? Commissioner Kogler? None? Okay. Seeing that there's none, let's roll call.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Marlowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Chairperson Christensen?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Good luck, guys. Okay. Moving on. Thank you. So, next on the agenda, we have discussion items. Do we have any discussion items, Warren?
Nothing to discuss.
All right. Consent calendar. Do we have any changes or do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move that we approve the minutes for August 12th, 19th, and 26th.
Commissioner Connolly, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Kogler seconds. And we get roll call, please.
Commissioner Connolly?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Marlowe?
Aye.
Chairperson Christensen?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Great, thank you. Moving on to other reports. Do we have anything new on the Paso Robles Streetscape and Ad Hoc Committee report?
We don't have anything specific on Paso Robles Street right now. I think we're kind of waiting for things to settle down with the election. That's probably something we'll revisit in 2025. I will point out on Railroad Street, though, which kind of got the streetscape discussion going, the old lush limousine. We do have most of the streetscape in. So the pavers are in, the new bench is in, the tree grates are in. The building is almost done as well. So if you haven't been back behind the theater, take a look at it. It's coming together really nicely. And then we'll also be extending that streetscape up on the 12th Street parking lot when that's redone next year.
Thank you. How about anything on housing constraints and zoning?
Yeah, so the council approved the zoning code. It's been through second reading, so that's done at this point. So congratulations on that. That was a lot of work.
Good job.
So just when you thought you were done, the state of California just significantly changed all the ADU rules in the state. So on your next agenda, we are coming back with a total redo of the ADU ordinance that you guys just recommended and the council just approved, which we have to have done before the end of the calendar year.
Wow.
So it's a rush. So don't be surprised if you have a little sense of deja vu, but that's coming very quickly.
Sure, you guys are excited about that.
Yeah, we literally found out the day after the final council hearing.
Oh my God, sick joke.
Katie and Darcy are still recovering from that. And then let's see, Housing Constraints Committee. So after the election, there will be a meeting. I think it is November 14th. I think Marcy's been trying to, checking everybody's calendars that are on that committee, make sure you're ready. The council did adopt a number of goals to encourage additional rental housing production. So that's going to be the main focus of the Housing Constraint Committee at this next meeting, and probably moving forward is really kind of figuring out how to implement some of those new council goals related to rental housing.
Question on that, Warren. I know there's been some changes and it's been a while since we've really discussed who are the members on that committee. Are there members here that?
I think it's Neal and Kogler still.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to develop DRC committee rotation schedule. Are there any changes at this time? No. Okay. And we'll move into planning commissioner's comments. We'll start with Commissioner Marlowe down there at the end.
Yeah, I've sent out our work's putting on an event at the Madonna Expo called Beyond. It's basically a construction expo with architects, contractors, engineers, and a bunch of different vendors and booths. And, there's, 20 or 30 vendors, live demonstrations, speakers. I mean, it's going to have pretty much all the main contractors in the area, a lot of the engineers, a lot of the architects. It's going to be a really cool going to be doing raffles, giveaways, like every half an hour. There's an open bar at 3 to 4. I sent out a comp code. It's free for anyone, planning department as well, city engineer, anybody that wants to come. It's going to be a really great like networking event. There's a lot of really cool speakers, and I really just encourage you guys. It's like from 10 to 4 this coming Thursday, and it's going to be, we're trying to make it the premier construction like event, and it's thinking beyond, and it's a lot of cool technology like modeling and robot dogs and live demonstrations, and it's really kind of a neat thing that my work's been growing over the last few years, and they've stepped it up a lot, so we hope to see you guys there.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Conley. Can you turn your mic on? Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm on. I thought it was on. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going on a cruise, so the 22nd I won't be here for the Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Davis, any comments?
Since we're announcing events, I'll see you all this weekend. Pioneer Day is on Saturday. All right. And I do have a comment. You know, I'm only going to be here till March. I'm going to be term limited off. And so I'm just going to take my opportunity to say something because you're going to limit me to 3 minutes, Warren, when I'm retired. But, you know, I drive an intersection here in Paso, a new intersection that is a bit disturbing to me. And I'd just like my fellow commissioners to check it out. I drive it a lot to go to Tradition. So the intersection of North River Road and River Oaks has been redesigned. And, okay. So I'm not sure. Hi. I'm not sure if you have a similar, I'm not sure it's any better than it was. And I'm a little concerned about someone driving northbound. And I know a lot of us stay in the city limits and we're not going to go northbound, but for the people going northbound, it's kind of confusing to turn left there. And there's kind of blind where I'm afraid there's going to be a head-on collision there. And I've seen some incidences there. There was room for a wider intersection, and I'm a little concerned about it. I know there are a lot of older people that drive that intersection. They'd like not having to stop. But I don't think it's necessarily a better intersection. I'd just like to make that comment. I you know, for the safety of Paso Robles, I think that it deserves another look. But if you'd like to comment,
yeah. So you are echoing concerns of the community. We have been getting a lot of calls in on the intersection. We did do a third-party traffic analysis that just completed last week. The results were to put it back to a three-way stop configuration.
Really?
And so I do have a meeting next week with our main streets guy. He's ordering all the parts right now, signs, poles, everything currently. So we expect those materials in next week. We're going to paint out where everything's going to go, and those should be implemented, you know, before the end of the month, early next month.
Okay, so you have, I mean, they're going to get people complaining, no, I like not having to stop, but
Yeah.
I just didn't think it was a
Yeah, so
better
the goal
intersection.
was to improve sight distance coming southbound on River Road. And so we did achieve that because we brought that portion of the intersection up.
Mhm.
It was hard for them to look up the hill at someone coming down the hill. And the kind of the nexus of the reason why this all happened was in 2009 city council meeting. They were anticipating larger volumes of flow needing to make that turn and not having a lot of people coming southbound on River. With this traffic analysis study we did, that just got completed, it showed that is not of an issue, and the intersection will still handle it at a level A intersection with
At a three-way stop.
At a three-way stop.
Okay,
So,
thank you for the update. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. I just had to vent a little bit.
Yeah, no.
Kindly.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
We haven't cut you off at 3 minutes, so is there more you'd like to add? You want to add some more? We can give you some discussion time. Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you. Katie, I would like to thank you for slide number 7 in the Pocket Village presentation. How's that for specific? As I look through the packet, I'm always wrestling with these kinds of things about, okay, which unit's sitting where and where is this unit? Your sequential color thing was perfect. It was spot on, so thank you.
Commissioner Neal, any comments? I will just say, as regards to that intersection, I've been up there a lot, so I would agree with her because I find myself going much faster coming back down to River Road. So that's a good point. I'm glad they're looking at that. I just wanted to thank staff tonight again for such a great job on all these presentations and moving us through, and my fellow commissioners. And Commissioner Marlowe, I am going to try and come by there tomorrow. So Thursday for the event. Yeah. So I appreciate that very much. And anybody would like to make a motion for adjournment? Oh, you know what? We got staff comments. I apologize. I keep jumping past that.
Just a couple quick things. They've been out paving the roads at the Olson South Chandler specific plan. So the new Sherwood extension out to Lene is basically paved now. It's not open for traffic yet. Airport Road up the hill has been paved. That traffic circle has been paved. Fontana Lene have been redone. The affordable apartments on a Fontana, the Housing Authority project is wrapping up. It's looking really good. The planning area 13, they've got about 40 units framed up right now. Shea Homes is getting ready to start their model complex. We just had 2 more projects, KHOV and TrueMark just went through DRC, so they're approved. So they'll probably be breaking ground, starting construction early next year. So things are really starting to come together out there. It's turning into a real project. So if you haven't been out there, take a drive and take a look at it. On the boys' school project, we are still working on getting the EIR ready for recirculation. We're trying to just nail down exactly how the traffic mitigation is going to go out there. So I think the schedule's probably trying to get that out for public review before the end of the year, which gets us into probably public hearings. Winter 2025 is probably our best case scenario. So I know that one's been a long time coming, but it's still there. We're still working on it. It's getting closer by the day. And then finally, the city council appointed Chris Hewott as the interim city manager. So I know there's a lot of discussion going on about that issue. If you have any concerns or questions, please contact Chris Hewott about whatever you may have a question about. He is the point of information on anything related to that position.
Thank you. I do have one other question in regards to Union and where it runs into 46 there. I noticed they repainted the stop sign so that it's separated to go right and left. I thought we were trying to eliminate going left onto 46. Is that still going to happen? Because it scares me every time I go there and see somebody trying to pull out left.
Yeah, so we've conditioned a number of projects that were approved there that haven't moved to construction yet to basically close off that left out. Caltrans just did basically the pavement rehabilitation, and Caltrans just replaces it exactly like it is. Okay. So yeah, they're going to restripe it with the left, but we're all in agreement that that left needs to go away sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Do we have a movement to adjourn? Commissioner Kogler, second from Davis. Thank you. Everybody have a great night. Appreciate it. Warren, I have one question for you.